everyone. Let me turn my mic on. Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming. Today is the City Council meeting for Monday, August 10th, 2020. And in accordance with LB 898, please be advised that there's a copy of the Open Meeting Act posted in the back of the chamber by the northwest door. And let us all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a brief period of silence. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. The order of business of the City Council will be as follows. The clerk will call items listed on the agenda under public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on an item should come forward after the clerk reads that item. The applicant and those in favor should speak first, then those opposed second. The applicant then make one short rebuttal. Each speaker should begin by stating their name, address, and whether you are speaking in favor or in opposition of the item. Testimony is limited to 5 minutes per speaker. After all public hearings, the council will vote on resolutions and items listed under third reading. On the second and last Mondays of the month, immediately prior to the adjournment, anyone may speak on any issue that's not on the agenda for that date nor planned for a future agenda. Will the clerk please call the first item, which is our... Yeah, let's call up our city attorney.
Good afternoon, Johansi Christie, city attorney.
Yay.
I'm here to administer an oath of office to our new city clerk. Ready? Okay. Repeat after me. I, Sulani Fan,
I, Sulani Fan,
solemnly swear or affirm
solemnly swear or affirm
that I will support
that I will support
the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Nebraska,
the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of Nebraska,
and that I will faithfully and impartially
and that I will faithfully and impartially
discharge the duties of the office of city clerk
discharge the duties of the office of city clerk
in and for Lincoln, Nebraska,
in and for Lincoln, Nebraska,
according to law and to the best of my ability.
according to law and to the best of my ability.
Congratulations.
Would you like to say a few words?
Yay.
Wow. I just want to tell everyone thank you. Thank you. Thank you for the city council. Thank you, Brandon Kaufman. Thank you, finance department family. And most importantly, thank you for my parents. It's something that I've always thought at some point in time that would happen, like years down the line, but I'm very grateful and I'm honored to be able to be a part of the city as an employee, as a public representative, and just to be doing something in my heart that is very important to me. I've always give the best of me to everyone, my family, my friends, my colleagues, but most importantly to my family, my parents. They're sacrificed so much, I've sacrificed with them, but I wouldn't be here without them. So I just want to tell them thank you, and that I will give the city and give all the best that I can in this position. And I am very grateful to finance. I'm surprised to see all these people here actually. And I've learned a lot from all of them, and a lot from you folks, and just a lot in general from even our public and just everyone here. So I'm very honored and most importantly, really humbled. This means a lot. So thank you.
Could you introduce your family that's here? That'd be great.
That's a great.
Sure. My father, Cam, my mom, Noi, my mom, Lucy, my husband, Fong, my son, Enzo, my daughter, Subi, and my niece, Athena, my cousin, Kat, my sister, Serena, and my nephew, Ronan. And that's just a little bit. We got a big family. So, yes, but most importantly, all of you here are my family as well.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shelby. So well deserved.
Yay.
We appreciate everything that you do, and we do know you bring passion to this job, so. You got a beautiful family.
I don't mind the delay.
No, this is good. Brings smiles to me. Mhm.
I'm gonna cry.
We'll give a second. Oh. Mm-hmm.
Take it outside.
Okay, Madam Clerk, let's move on.
Just an announcement for everyone. In addition to having our public comment here in the council chambers, there will be a webinar that will be available for public comment for the city council meetings held on August 10th and the 31st, 2020. For those who wish to testify by webinar, you must register with the city clerk's office to participate. Please contact the city clerk's office at 402-441-7436 or by email at cityclerk@lincoln.ne.gov. City clerk's office must be notified by 12 p.m. the day of the meeting, and in order to register, please provide your name, address, email address, and contact number. If you have any other concerns or wish to express to the city council, please email them at councilpacket@lincoln.ne.gov. And if you do wish to appear in person on an item on the agenda, you may come to the County City Building at 555 South 10th Street. Limited seating is available in the council chambers, or you may wait in the Bill Luxford studio or in the hallway until your item is called. You can then enter the council chambers and come to the podium. After you're finished speaking, you can exit the chambers through the door to your immediate left. Also available at the podium are hand sanitizers and sprays for the microphone, so if you wish to use that, please do so. And our first item of the agenda is our consent agenda. It's items 1A through 2A.
Is there anyone wishing? Yes. Director Johnson.
Good afternoon, Lynn Johnson with Lincoln Parks and Recreation. By municipal code, there are 2 student member positions of the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. Those members are appointed for 1-year terms. We typically reach out to the high schools and or reach out to Youth Leadership Lincoln to encourage applicants for those positions. This year we had 5 applications. The Executive Committee of the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board interviewed the 5 applicants by Zoom. One of the members who they are recommending be appointed is here today, Dylan Cork, and I'll ask Dylan to come forward. The other individual, Gatrin Gatnor, I think he had hoped to participate by Zoom or by webinar, and I don't think that we made a connection for him today, and that was, I think that was our fault, and I apologize for that. But I would like to introduce to you Dylan Cork and ask him to come forward, if you would, please. Dylan, you might just brief introduction and.
Yeah.
Well, I'm Dylan Cork. I go to Lincoln Southeast High School. I applied for this position last year as well, which is a little bit more complicated this year, but I'm still so overjoyed that I got on this year. I'll be a senior at Southeast. But I mean, I'm interested in it beyond any of you could probably understand or know. I'm just so happy that I get this opportunity, especially as a student and as a kid, or I guess child of Lincoln. I think this is a great opportunity that I have the privilege to be able to have as my own.
Mhm. Any comments? Dylan, thank you so much for your passion and your thoughts. Yes.
Mr. Chairman.
Councilwoman Lexington.
Good afternoon, Mr. Cook. I was curious if Parks and Recreation is something that you'd like to study when you go into college.
Possibly.
It's not a
It'd be hard to say no.
Yeah, as a senior, this is certainly something I need to figure out soon. But I'm certainly interested in that kind of atmosphere of the field, the environment. So I mean, being in Parks and Rec on the advisory board may even bring me closer down that path, which I'd be happy to if it does. But right now, I guess I'd still like to pursue something related to it with the environment and kind of towards engineering a little bit. But
Hear, hear. Congratulations.
thank you.
Any other questions? Well, thank you so much
Thank you.
for willing to serve. Okay, is there anybody else who'd like to come forward with on anything on our consent agenda? Seeing none, let's move on.
We can vote on these items. Item 1E is appointing Katran Gatnor to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board for a term to expire May 31st, 2021, introduced by Christensen.
So moved.
Second?
Been moved and seconded by Councilwoman Ward. Okay. Any questions? Please call the roll.
Christensen,
Yes.
Raybold,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Washington,
Yes.
Schob,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
McGinnis.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Item 1B is appointing Dylan Cork to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board for a term to expire May 31st, 2021, introduced by Christensen.
So moved.
Second?
Been moved and seconded by Councilwoman Washington. Any questions? Please call the roll.
Schob,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
Raybold,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Washington,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
McGinnis.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Item 1C is authorizing the mayor to execute an agreement with the Nebraska Department of Transportation to allow the use of Federal Service Transportation Program funds for construction engineering for the 56th and Yankee Hill project, introduced by Christensen.
So moved.
Second?
Been moved and seconded by Councilwoman Ward. Any questions? Please call the roll.
Schob,
Yes.
Washington,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Raybold,
Yes.
McGinnis.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Item 1D is authorizing the mayor to execute an agreement with the Nebraska Department of Transportation to allow the use of Federal Service Transportation Program funds for construction and construction engineering for the Holdridge Street pavement rehabilitation, introduced by Christensen.
So moved.
Second?
Been moved and seconded by Councilperson Ward. Any questions? Please call the roll.
Washington,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
Schob,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Raybold,
Yes.
McGinnis.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Item 1E is approving the distribution of funds representing interest earnings on short-term investments of idle funds during the month ended June 30th, 2020, introduced by Raybold.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded by Councilman Christensen. Any comments? Please call the roll.
Bowers,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
Schob,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Washington,
Yes.
Raybold,
Yes.
McGinnis.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. That ends our consent items. Next is Section 4, Public Hearing Liquor Resolutions. Item 4A, Manager Application of Samuel J. Voss for Emmanuel Retirement Communities, doing business as The Landing at Williamsburg Village at 3500 Faulkner Drive.
Thank you. Oh, God.
You're telling me to back away. I apologize.
Please repeat after me. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth as you really believe it to be?
I do.
Thank you.
Adam Kenning, Corporate Legal Counsel for Emmanuel. Last name is Kuenning, in favor of the application. What we have today is a manager application. The Landing at Williamsburg village already has a liquor license. We're simply bringing on a new manager for this as our prior manager left for other opportunities. Mr. Voss is here with me if there are any questions, and be happy to answer any questions the council may have.
Does anybody have any questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll be calling items 4B through 4E together. We have application of Mize Market Inc., doing business as Mize Market for a Class D liquor license at 2727 North 11th Street, and the related manager application of Tuan A. Mai. Also, the application of Mize Market Inc., doing business as Mize Market for a Class D liquor license at 1340 West O Street, and also the related manager app of Tuan A. Mai. Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth as you really believe it to be?
I do.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Tuan Mai. I would like to application for liquid license for both locations.
Okay, yes, Councilman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Mai, thanks for coming forward. It's my understanding these are grocery stores that used to be Schmick's Markets?
Yes.
And you're going to be looking at a third one on 27th Street soon?
Should be, I already have IGA Marketplace, and this one should be the
Yes.
third one. Yes.
Well, thank you very much for continuing to help our community with groceries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Yep, then I just would like to add my thanks to your support for the Northwest District in Lincoln and the IGA stores in these two locations. I live relatively close to all of them, so thank you for stepping up for those neighborhoods. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you for coming down.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I move approval of items 4A through 4E.
Second?
Been moved and seconded by Councilperson Ward that we approve 4A through 4E. Is there anybody else who would like to speak on any of these items? Either public or from our group? Okay, seeing none, please call the roll.
Schob,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
Raybold,
Yes.
Washington,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
McGinnis.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Next is section 5. Item 5A is appealed by Daniel Sloan of Planning Commission's approval of special permit 20005 to allow for an alternative to imprisonment facility for up to 6 persons and residents on property generally located at 420 South 28th Street.
Okay. Do we need a motion or we just have public
Public
hearing?
hearing.
Anybody willing or wanting to come forward to speak on 5A at this time?
Good afternoon. I'm Roy Helm. I live at 2750 South 13th Street, and I would request that the council uphold the appeal as submitted and reject SP 20005 in its entirety. I think it's important, especially after we had a moratorium placed last week on AIF housing permitting based on no regulations in existence, that we also place this facility, this property, in the same category to ensure that all of this type of housing are on level ground. It's, in my estimation, fairly irresponsible of us as a community to move forward without regulations that protect not only the community, but the tenants of those residents as well. Until we have clarity and what the requirements are and that they can be actually protected, I don't think we should be moving forward and approving any permits. So that is my request. Please, please support the appeal. Thank you.
Any questions? Okay, thank you for coming
Thank you.
down. Who else would like to come forward to speak?
Good afternoon, Council. My name's Carl Mao. I live at 1035 South 32nd Street here in Lincoln. I know several of you from my business of being a business representative for steam fitters and plumbers local 464 here in town, but I'm not here in that capacity today. I'm here as a member of the Woods Park neighborhood. I come to you to speak for this particular business. I won't go into the details of why this has caught my attention. It's a long story. Admittedly, I have come into this late. I would like to see this go through. I think this is very important as a city that we do something like this. With the overcrowding that we have in the penitentiaries now, I think it's something we need to get a handle on. I do believe that there needs to be a roadmap for this, some regulations. I think the Asiagos have probably gone through some of that. I can't tell you everything, but I have seen through a couple of emails with the people in my neighborhood association what they want to see done. And I'm for 2 or 3 of those. However, I do not want to see this over-regulated. In my opinion, this is no different than somebody running out of a house, the 2 or 3 or 4 people or whatever. The folks that come into something like this need some help, a leg up. Not everybody, but some do. And I think it's very, very important that we do something like this. I think it would be a great boost for the neighborhood association. It'd be something that they could really hang their hat on, that they agreed to. But again, like I said, I'm not the one to make rules on this. I think there's a couple things that could be looked at and put into some references for folks. But again, I don't want to see it over-regulated. That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions?
Questions for Mr. Mel? Thank you for coming
All right.
down.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
Hello, my name is Serena Frietz. I just sort of wanted to echo a lot of the sentiments that the previous speaker just mentioned. I think it's really important to be able to offer, we're only looking at 3 additional people added to this facility, right? And that's important. That could really change people's lives. I think it's important that we support this as a community and you do the right thing. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hello, Tom Arciaga, Tina's husband. So yeah, we're here again, and I just think that the person that's doing this, my wife, is just more than enough qualified. She's very qualified to do this. At the last meeting, there was a few things that were asked of my wife, what makes a good neighbor, and we've done a lot in that neighborhood. I know it doesn't seem like a lot, but we've bit our tongue on a few things, subjects that have happened, and here's one that I'd like to show.
Face up.
Face up.
Here's a, is that the right way? Do you need
No, turn it clockwise.
Tree at the bottom, yeah.
There you go.
Okay.
Yay.
This is our fence right here. This is our neighbor's fence, Tom and Maureen, that live to the south of us. And as you can tell, the tree is split in the middle. And this happened about 5 years ago. We were out of the house. And before this, I wanted to put a fence there because they had 2 chows, and we had the little ones there. The chows are a little aggressive a few times, and so I wanted to put a fence there. Tom and Maureen were very adamant on, please don't do that, and we never did. So we had it flagged. They saw that, and we just, like I said, never did the fence up until this endeavor that my wife's doing, that they put the fence up. So that's their brown fence. They know that tree is half of theirs. The limb tree trunk fell on their garage, $6,800. We paid for it. We did it all. I was so upset with my wife. I said, Tina, don't do this. They need to pay for half. They haven't even called us. They know that's half their tree. What makes a good neighbor? My wife's just let it be. Let it be. Opposition letters about how we don't take care of our place. The Cerny's, their backyard, that's just their garage. Trash everywhere, even in their backyard. I mean, I'll put my backyard to that rental house to anybody's except Tom and Marine's because it's immaculate. They have a very nice backyard. So I know sticks and stones, turn your cheek, don't say nothing, but when is enough enough? We've done a lot. We've bit our tongue a lot. $6,800. Our renter's insurance went up, $1,000 deductible. Would you guys do that? Would you guys walk away and just pay it? Well, we did. And now they're saying that we're unruly. That's not fair. It's not fair at all. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none. Anyone else like to come forward and speak on this item?
Pam King, 2750 South 13th Street. And I would like to address the council to uphold appeal SP 20005 and reject it. My husband and I live next to a home that is just becoming an AIF. And the landlord has not been forthcoming on what was going on with the house. We saw a couple out in the yard. We thought that we were going to have a couple and a family living next to us because that section of our neighborhood is very family oriented. So before any permits or more than 3 unrelated adults living in a single family dwelling should even be considered, there should be guidelines to permit the residents of the AIF house and those living in the neighborhood so that everyone can succeed. I don't want animosity with the neighbors and these men or women that are going to be housed there. I do believe that we do need to have these homes, but I don't think that more than 3 people should be allowed in those homes. Those are the guidelines right now. I don't think that someone coming out of prison and living on a mattress on a floor, that's a good situation. And from what I have heard, this is what will happen. Also, we have a lot of transition in our neighborhood, and from what I have heard about these homes, we might have people there for a week, we might have them for 2 weeks, they might be there for a month. We have no idea of people's coming and goings. We're a strong neighborhood. We take care of each other. We watch out for each other. We have had some crime in the neighborhood that between all the neighborhoods seeing things, we were able to have things prevented, or those people that broke into a garage were then found. So I'm asking the council to please uphold and appeal 20005. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Jane Sebi, Woods Park Neighborhood Association. Those of you who've been, around in Lincoln a little bit may recognize this photograph. This is in our neighborhood. It's the former location of Dirt Cheap. And I bring it up today to show you what happens when there are no regulations on something. We knew early on Dirt Cheap was selling illegal drugs. We tried to get the police to do something. They were somewhat limited by state statutes or the lack thereof. It finally took, I believe, 2 or 3 years and the assistance of the federal government to get this place closed down. Now, the owner openly admitted that she knew what she was doing was questionable. It was highly illegal. There were 100 and some kids who ended up in the hospital. I believe there were some people who were dead. Now, I am not making a comparison between dirt cheap and the AIFs, not at all. All I'm saying is set up the regulations ahead of time or spend years trying to clean it up afterwards. There's nobody who is against AIFs. We just want some degree of expectation of how things are going to happen so we can react. And this goes for everybody. It's the residents, it's the owners and managers of the facilities. Their liability is going to be huge if anything happens, you know, if their insurance company pays for it. It's a new industry. I imagine that'll be a battle. And the neighbors, as was mentioned just a second ago. We survive in a lot of ways by knowing who our neighbors are. I often, not often, but regularly get a comment or a phone call from somebody saying, hey, be aware, this is kind of weird stuff. Maybe it's nothing, but just heads up. Without regulations, we can't do that. We have no way of protecting ourselves, so we call the police more, we ask for more government services. It gets to be a mess, and cleaning it up afterwards takes a long, long time. So it's messy to fix things now, but you're going to be a lot happier doing it now than you are 2-3 years down the road when something really difficult happens. So thank you. That's the last thing I wanted to say. Please just consider the importance of getting something on the books before, so everybody knows how this is going to work. Thank you.
You bet. Thank you for coming down.
Hi, I'm Tony Arciaga. I'm Tina's daughter. Do I have to say where I live or? Okay. I just want to say something really quick that I've heard a lot of opposition, like we just heard about regulation, which is fine. But I will say that although regulation is needed, it shouldn't be penalized against Tina, because out of anyone that should be doing this, it's her. And I think that although like regulation is good and whatnot, what are we going to do with all these people in prison? Yes, it should be, we should come up with regulation, but how long is that going to take? What are all these people going to do? You know, they're just sitting in prison. Then they have nowhere to go and they repeat the same cycle. So I just think it shouldn't be penalized against her, someone that is overqualified to do this. And not to mention there's already several places that are running illegally, unregulated. And she's doing it the right way, trying to get it run by the city. So that's all I really have to say, guys.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Any questions? Who else would like to come forward?
Dan Sloan, Woods Park neighborhood. I know you guys are looking for new information. I just want to say that this is not new, but I don't think anybody that I've talked to, and Carl and I had an extensive conversation the other day, we're not that far apart on the issues. I don't think anybody questions Tina's integrity. I think where our fear lies is what happens next. What happens to this property when Tina and Tommy retire, when they move to Arizona, when they do something different and this forever and ever and ever thing is still there? And it's a fairly lucrative thing, and I don't think they'll have much trouble selling it. And without proper restrictions and without proper oversight, maybe the Arciagas are the poster people of the AIF world. I don't know. I'm not condemning them. I'm just saying that without clear guidelines, you're just asking for all kinds of trouble. I would like to say that I'm really grateful for the hard work that you guys have put in on this. I know the neighbors on both sides of the issue have been hounding you somewhat mercilessly, and you've graciously given a lot of your time to really try and craft a compromise. And while I'm the one that appealed this, I'm not looking for a no AIF in my neighborhood. I'm looking for a good AIF in my neighborhood. I don't know how to do that right now without stopping this and starting over. So that was the tact I had to take. I think you folks have a lot more latitude to do different things. And I really appreciate the, the sincere thought and effort and energy that you've all put into this thing.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Sloan? Seeing none? Who else would like to come forward?
Hi.
Could you speak over to one of the mics?
Not the overhead. And I used to be a teacher, really. Members of the council, my name is Cindy Cerny. I guess I could take this off right now. And I live at 434 South 28th Street. I'm in opposition to Special Permit 2005. I've lived in the neighborhood for 35 years. I've raised my kids there, gone to neighborhood school. I'm invested in the neighborhood. During the time the Arciagas lived there, 20 years, or time they've owned it, they have not demonstrated they can be responsible neighbors or good stewards of the neighborhood. When they tell the city council they want to be good neighbors, past experience makes us a little wary. I believe the situation would have been much different if an established nonprofit had come to the neighborhood, communicated its plan, and asked for input. I think I wouldn't be here today. The Woods Park neighborhood did all the heavy lifting to make the council aware of the growing issue in Lincoln of these facilities. Yet, we don't benefit from the moratorium on AIFs. We should be part of the moratorium, and that's only fair. I mean, this was kind of the test case. I do have some solutions, though, not just talking about problems. Nonprofit organizations have more rules and regulations and transparency. If these individuals are truly doing this out of the goodness of their hearts, make it a nonprofit. You have more oversight over a nonprofit. Make an umbrella category for all AIF, group homes, traditional living with basic health and safety regulations. Make it reviewable every 1 to 2 years unless there's a complaint, and then review it immediately. It should not transfer with the property. That's insane to have something just continue on and on and on, no matter who has it. Regulation should be the same as for the rest of Lincoln, according to the requirements that only 3 unrelated people can live in a residence. Based on the size of 420's lot, it cannot be considered a duplex. People affected by this decision have lived in the neighborhood for some 40 plus years. We are a community and we take care of each other. How is it that an absentee landlord has more rights than our neighborhood, than my community? Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Others would like to come forward?
I forget which mask I have on, so I don't know which way to get it off. Hi. Hello, my name is Peggy Olson. I live at 509 South 28th Street. I want to thank the City Council members for this opportunity to testify in opposition to the SP 20005, the permit to allow the alternative to incarceration facility at 420 South 28th Street, just down the block from me. You've received lots of information in opposition. I'd like to particularly acknowledge Tom Kiefer's research on how other communities have handled this, because I think they're currently relatively unregulated. This isn't going to be the first time it comes up in a community, so you might be the standard bearers. I chose to add my voice after the Planning Commission hearing Testimony and support centered around the need for these facilities and the need to support people transitioning out of incarceration facilities. I fully agree, and that is precisely why I oppose the AIFs in their current amorphic and unaccountable state. As Dick Campbell noted in his Planning Commission meeting, quote, "We do not have the parameters in place with which to handle these." The facility operating at 420 South 28th Street has exterior cameras and no one on site. The women are being surveilled as they enter and exit. That's not the same as being supported. I have 20 years' experience providing educational programs at various facilities within the Nebraska State Prison System, at drug and alcohol treatment facilities, including those that treat coexisting conditions, both providing day residential programs, Fresh Start, Houses of Hope, St. Monica's, Centerpoint, as Cindy Cerny said. If any of those came to us saying that they were interested in providing this programming, I think we would be in support, albeit still advocating, so it wouldn't matter who was operating it. If the systems are in place, it wouldn't matter who's operating it. As it is now, it matters very much who's operating it. And you aren't going to do the program planning, but when that comes into place, it would be really important to contact the people who are doing the work and have done the work. Additionally, I want to speak to the house itself. You know, we live in a neighborhood that I consider a reestablished neighborhood. Our house would have been a fourplex had Woods Park Neighborhood Association and others not worked so diligently. The people who inherited our house wanted to make it a fourplex, but they felt that they couldn't make enough money off of it, and that's how we ended up with the house. So the house itself. 20 years ago, the Arciagas purchased a beautifully cared for and well-maintained home with a brand new boiler for radiator heating, complete with gorgeous vintage radiator covers that were a great find for the previous owner. Approximately 6 years later, I walked through the open house when Arciagas tried to sell it to be greeted by porch floorboards that weren't connected to joists on both ends, wires coming out of the walls where light fixtures or switches should be, holes in the floor where the radiators had been connected, original baseboard and crown molding cut through sloppily to accommodate a forced air system. It was no surprise when the house didn't sell, even though it was listed in an affordable house at an affordable price. Compare that to a house that just sold across the street from 420 that was beautifully redone with an eye to the character of the house. You can't remodel with a Sawzall, have glued exposed pink foam board, and consider that an upgrade or safety. The Planning Commission meeting, Tina Arciaga said that they wanted to put the profits from the AIF back into the house to preserve its historical character. I'm inclined to say too late. If this indeed is the plan, it is an absolute polar opposite direction from the last 20 years that they've owned the house. There is a problem of over-incarceration and overcrowding in facilities. The solution isn't to create a for-profit alternative to prisons. It invites profiteering with no recourse for those harmed, including those who are allegedly being served. I own a duplex at 521 South 28th Street, next door to our home. It provides affordable housing. I hire professionals to do the electrical work, the plumbing work, all of that. Now, instead of providing affordable housing for a long-term tenants, I could have 6 people. It is a duplex. It's not being considered a duplex for the purposes of housing 6 people in a single-family dwelling. I would now have the rent I receive every month, every 2 days. Every 2 days, I would have the month. If you think that isn't going to motivate some landowners to do that, I have actually worked with juvenile probation twice. I've had a couple of young people given into my care when they left incarceration. There was a procedure I had to follow. There are many things that I had to do in order to qualify to do that. I feel like there really isn't a system in place right now, or the system isn't adequate. People who've been incarcerated shouldn't carry the burden of stigma, but maybe those who want to profit off of them should. Zoning matters. I think of our neighborhood, as I said, as a reestablished neighborhood. We have mixed housing. Arciagas have now purchased a place that's zoned R4. So does it depend on how much parking they can put in their backyard, how much of that yard they can pave to determine how many people they can have in there? That seems to be what the Planning Commission has asserted. So you're going to have to consider where for-profit AIFs fit with affordable housing. We do need to look at comprehensive solutions to overcrowding in incarceration facilities. AIFs, as they currently stand, aren't a solution. They're a bigger problem. Thank you so much for your consideration. I'll give you you'll have my contact information, and please feel free to let me know. Is that beep telling me it's time?
Yep. Thanks, Peggy. Is there any other questions or comments? Anybody else would like to come forward? Do we have any questions for staff at this time?
Yes, please.
Oh. Or let's wait. Would you like to come forward?
Oh, I'm sorry, this got stuck on my earring. Okay, I'm Tina Arciaga, and I'm the applicant for SP 20005. I didn't say this last time, I just went over what I did, the service expectations of our program. Neighborhood concerns, you guys never heard this, the Planning Commission had heard this the first time around, so I just wanted to let you know. So there was opposition letters, which I conceptualized them and put them in a forum to try to answer and appease them as best I could, and I don't know if you guys knew all the work that I had tried to do. So initially, when I went to the Woods Park neighborhood, they said there was supposed to be 8 to 10 women at connecting links. One is worried about overcrowding, health concerns. Quote, in an opposition letter, quite frankly, I'm surprised that the health department and fire department would allow this. There's no question that this would have a negative impact on our way of life. I have agreed to max out with 6 women. This was also noted by George from the Planning Committee. Our architect, our site plan shows that for 6. We have the parking in the back, and we've taken account for the concerns of the neighborhood to alleviate to 6 for safety issues. Another opposition letter, the applicant has no previous experience with this type of facility and will not have on-site 24/7 supervision. We don't have to have 24 on-site supervision. I agreed to do that. I have 3 people there. I can't have someone spend the night there because I'd have 4 and then I would be illegal. As stated in the Woods Park Association, we have surveillance, we have security cameras, we do have people there programming and watching over the females there. We're asking for 3 more. Let's keep it in perspective. Would you care for a facility in your neighborhood? Would Tina Arciaga want this next to her house? Yeah, I would. I don't know what more to say. There's no direct correlation with this type of permit negatively or adversely affecting the property values of any historical home or property value. There's no valid correlation. Another one, concern, I'm trying to rezone. That was a letter that went out saying lies, lies, lies. I'm not rezoning. It has always been R2. I'm only re-permitting under the property. Late at night, there's going to be horns honking, people coming over, causing loud commotions at night. Will the applicant ensure that there are no drugs and alcohol? Yes. Sober living environment, drug testing, we know they're sober. We don't have parties, people causing ruckuses loud at night. In fact, there is a triplex across the street that has parties and ruckuses, and it's pretty unruly, and it's directly across the street from our sober house, which is a concern to me as a neighbor. And that would be an absentee landlord who's lived in California for 20 years. We live in Lincoln, and we've been very, very aware of the house. This is a cash cow. I'm sorry, I didn't know that term until now. It's a cash cow for Tina. If this were indeed a cash cow, I wouldn't have gone through all the length to make this legal and inclusive for all. I've obtained my master's as a therapist. Most counselors don't move into this kind of degree to make money. I've been doing this since 2006. I didn't become a counselor to make money. The introduction of an AIF operated by an absentee landlord who's consistently demonstrated not sharing the values, interests, and incentives of families. They may be referring to the house across the street, as I said before. Another neighbor just said that it's too late for me to sink money back in. We put $50,000 into this house. It's not too late. We've put in a new roof, new soffits, new double stall garage, heat pumps that take out the radiators all over the house, which is a huge cost. We've painted the house. We have put $50,000, a lot more than maybe some of other people, so it's never too late. We will continue preserving the historical value of this house. Another concern, things disappearing, panhandling at any time of the day. Most of these crimes were committed previously under the influence. They're sober now. These things are not going to apply as well. Just took a couple notes. We did not communicate our plan. Letters we sent out. We attended the meetings, a couple of them, and then we weren't invited anymore. I guess we're not a part of it.
We've been overly transparent. We own a nonprofit. They say, well, geez, if it's just not them doing it. We've owned a nonprofit. It's called Southside Boxing, EIN 562497885. Owned it for 20 years. My husband takes disadvantaged youth out of the community, puts them in the ring to do, they're sober. We've had it for 20 years. So we have an LLC, we have a sub-S corp, and we have a nonprofit. And let me tell you what, nonprofits are not more regulated than the others. We have all three. We never said that this would transfer with the property. In fact, our attorney contacted someone previous to this before today's meeting to perhaps put in some type of ordinances to show that we won't take this with the property. So when we sell this house, if we sell this house, we're going to go back to an R2 single family dwelling. I never said we were going to take this with the sell, so I don't know where that actually came from. No one on site, not true, we program there. We cannot have someone spend the night. As I said, we'd have 4 then, and you really don't need that for 3. It just seems like a lot of this is a personal vendetta based on emotion and not logical. So just to end, I just want to say that the need for transitional Nebraska, if these women can't live in this house, they'll have to live in another house in Lincoln. This house is as good as any transitional. They're filtered throughout Central Side, North Side, Lincoln, North Side. These homes are safe, structured, and are typically crime-free to the neighborhoods in which they exist. I also want to say that some AIF, I'm understanding there's only 2 AIFs that are actually brought to forth here. No one else has applied to my knowledge. So someone had mentioned there's an AIF, someone sleeping on a mattress, emotion, not related to me. So I just really hope that you can keep this in perspective. I'm sorry for all the city's time, planning time, city council time, all of this for 3 more women. That's all we're doing. So let's just please keep this in perspective, and I feel we're doing a really good job, and I just hope that you grant this. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Any questions? Yes. Councilwoman Rabel.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Arciaga. I just, I've heard a lot about the AIFs, and could you share with us, how do you get reimbursed by the state? And I've heard it's $20 per person a night, up to $90 per person per night. So could you share with us that structure and the accountability?
Yeah, that's the sliding fee scale that's through probation, and you can definitely refer to those policies and figures at that site. As far as the different structures, I don't know the amounts right off the top of my head. I think you asked me this question last time. It's on the website, or you can call Nebraska probation. So there is a difference between programming and versus someone living there, but I'm not for sure the exact differences in cost. You stated them, and if that's the case, then.
I think you had mentioned that that the residents in the house would get 5 hours of programming.
Correct.
Per week. Who is responsible for the oversight and the accountability of that programming? Because from what I understand, in order to get the higher reimbursable from the state, there has to be that 5 hours of programming per week for each of those individual residents.
So it's not clinical.
It's not clinical, correct.
It's not clinical. It's completely separated. And I will help oversee it, and I have a house manager that helps oversee it. And I'm hooking up with different parts of the community, like Jordan with the hub, and people coming in and doing programming with us. I mean, we're doing this 3 times a week, so we're just, reaching out and connecting, networking in the community, and having like programming, whether it's, where the hub can help us with actually building resumes, with networking with different people that might hire felons. There's a lot to it.
So then is there some type of paperwork you have to submit that demonstrates that these individuals have done the programming?
For sure. Like if we were to be audited or whatnot, we have to show that we're providing those services.
So it's something that you provide and the residents sign off on, and who does it go to then?
As if it's within the house, if probation were to ask for that, then I would be able to supply that information for them. Like I dot my I's and cross my T's, so if I were to be asked that, I would just show that proof.
So they don't require you to submit something on a weekly basis?
when we submit for what we do, we're saying that we do that on a weekly basis, and I do that on a weekly basis.
So you have to submit a weekly report of all the 5 hours of activity
No,
of each?
we don't have to submit a technical report.
There's no report that's required?
No, it's what I have on file at the house that I know I do, and if they audit me and need to come in and see it, I'm going to provide it.
Okay.
Because I wouldn't do something that I'm not doing.
Okay. And I'm sorry, this next question is a little bit tougher. Have you ever called the police on any of the neighbors?
Yeah, I have a video to share. No, actually, I'll say the email first. I think I provided this to you. Dear councilmen and women, I wanted to show you a situation that occurred this past weekend at our group home. My son parked his car. Sorry, this is a different element for me because this is mom mode. This is not business mode, okay? I wanted to show you a situation that had occurred to me this past weekend. In fact, Tommy, can you read us for me?
Okay.
No, just read this and then show the video.
I'll just, yeah, so basically.
No, just read, please, verbatim, what I
Okay.
sent to the council people.
Dear councilmen, men and women members, I wanted to show you a situation that had occurred this past weekend at our home. My son parked his car for 1 minute in the alley to grab something in the house. He came out to the situation, which is the video below. In this video, you will find 2 men accosting my son. One man telling him, "You were raised by wolves."
Were you raised by wolves?
Yeah, and do you even have parents? To the other man telling my son that we're not going to have this S word, I'm not going to say it, in our neighborhood. My son that said that has nothing to do with me. You can go find my mom. She's inside, where they proceeded to go up into the property. I came out and saw these 2 men aggressing my son and 1 man aggressing me at that time. This had nothing to do with any persons living in the group home. It had to do with angry neighbors displacing their anger and emotionally antagonizing a 17-year-old minor child. I called the police as a mother, and I wanted this situation noted and on file with the police department with regards to how these 2 men acted for someone parked in an alley for more than 1 minute at a time. I also was frightened for my son and for myself. Mind you, the other man didn't even have a car there. He just came down for the scene. Just wanted to make sure that the full story is told, and this has nothing to do with my group home. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me.
Here's the video.
Yeah.
Do you put it on here? You have to push play, honey.
It's not even on.
Oh. Oh, I have to turn my volume up.
I got it. Okay, so this is the video.
Yeah, are you recording me right now? Nobody in this alley. You guys have pretty. All right, dude, I ran in for 2 minutes. My bad. Yep. I'm leaving right now. Yep. We just want you guys to know that we don't want this shit here. That's not my problem. You don't have to. She's in there right now. Is she really? Did you have parents at all, buddy? Yeah, she's in there right now. Go get her. You get raised by wolves or something? You can go get her right now. She's in there. I just want you to move your fucking. Oh no, I will. I ran in for 2 minutes. That's my bad. Do it right now so I can fucking pull my car. You're talking to me right now. Do you want to have a conversation? Bye. I'm glad to leave. Goodbye.
And
Okay.
I was also there at this situation. We were inside fixing something in the bathroom, and it was not even a minute. Like, he came in, came out, and these men were very aggressive. Like, I was starting to get scared. That's why we called the police, because it got worse after this situation.
Okay.
So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
No.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else like to come forward to speak on this item? You've already come up once.
Yes. A rebuttal?
No, no, really. You get
Only the applicant can do rebuttal.
Anybody else? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on.
Staff
Yes.
questions, please?
We were going to do that when we come to the
Okay,
voting
got
session.
it.
We'll bring up staff. Is that what you're looking for?
I would like to, yeah, but you're saying we'll come,
Yeah.
we do it during the voting?
We'll
is what
do
you
it at the
suggest?
time we come to the voting session.
Okay.
Okay. Let's move on to 5B.
Item 5B, appeal by Justina Clark of Planning Commission's approval of special permit 20020 to allow for an alternative to imprisonment facility with up to 6 persons on property generally located at 838 F Street.
Is this item,
This item was pulled?
this item has been withdrawn, as I understand it.
Yep. Delayed or, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, was this completely withdrawn or delayed?
I believe the letter said withdrawn, right?
Withdrawn.
Letter requested to be withdrawn,
Great.
and so I'll move it to be withdrawn right now.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded by Councilperson Washington that we withdraw this item. Any other comments? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Christensen,
Yes.
Raybold,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Washington,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
Schob,
Yes.
McGinnis.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
Okay, call the next two items.
I'll call items 5C and 5D together. 5C is approving the City of Lincoln redevelopment agreement for the 2236 R Street redevelopment project between the city and 2236 R Street LLC relating to redevelopment of property generally located at 23rd and R Streets, and also amending the fiscal year 2019-2020 CIP to authorize an appropriate $180,000 in TIF funds for the 2236 R Street redevelopment project generally located at 23rd and R Streets.
Good afternoon, Dan Marvin, Urban Development. I'm here before you today to talk about a project that's over on 2236 R Street. Got a couple of pictures that we'll go through real quickly. This project was before you for the plan amendment. It's been before Planning Commission on June 10th. There was a 6-0 vote there. So first, this is the alley that would run behind this project, and the reason we're showing this. And the next picture is to show where some of the TIF funds will go. This is a gravel alley. We can do some paving back in that area. And this is the front of the, this is 2236 R Street. And what is before you is a project that would build this area. What you'll see here is this is retaining the little grocery store that's on the street, and there would be 12 apartments that would go in on either side of that area. And then in the back, you can see where the alley would go with the parking stalls at the back of the building. Included in this project is the language that we have here, which allows for people with housing vouchers to be able to secure housing at this location. There are 2 units that would be available for housing vouchers on this particular property. The sources and uses of the TIF. This is a small TIF program. It's $180,000 in TIF. The right-of-way improvements are those in the alley and in the front of the building. If we just go back to the very front of the building real quick, what we're anticipating doing is removing all of the concrete in the front and putting in more in green space elements in the front to try to soften that along the front. And then the other sources and uses on the TIF would be, there's an administrative fee that goes back to the city. There is some site acquisition, site prep, and facade enhancements on the building as well. I'm available for any questions if you have any, and the developer might be here too, so you might have a
Do we have any questions for Director Marvin? Yes, Councilperson Washington.
Director Marvin, thank you so much. Could you answer just a couple questions about the existing commercial space?
Yes.
So what, you said it's an operating grocery store right now? Convenience store or grocery?
Well, I think they make bread there that I have not sampled, but I hear is quite good, so.
Okay. And would that use be retained?
Yes.
Okay.
So the tenant that is there is going to be retained. I think that's the intent, is to keep the tenant there.
Okay.
And then keep those services in that neighborhood.
Thank you.
Is any other questions? I have one. Maybe it's for the applicant, but that is a tenant, and the applicant will own all 3 lots?
I believe so. So then there will be, it'll be a rental agreement would be my assumption, but if the applicant is here, probably better for them to answer that question.
Okay. Yeah, I might ask them a couple questions on the zoning and such.
Okay?
Is it in the TIF agreement anywhere that it needs to stay a food, or it can be anything?
Well, it's that what council has previously done is we expanded the PUD that was across the street to envelop this so that the uses that are going on this particular property can continue.
Any other questions? Okay. The applicant would want to come up, that'd be great.
Afternoon. I'm the applicant, Ben Kuntz. So I just want to thank the city. They've been very supportive so far. And I think you had a question about the zoning.
What's the area zoned?
It is zoned R6. We are rezoning R6 PUD, which will allow for the parking variation, the setback variation, and we've built in some exceptions into the PUD that allow us to maintain the existing use. But it doesn't allow it to be more extreme. So it could turn someday to a coffee shop, for example, but it could not turn to like a manufacturing facility or,
Okay, so you do have restrictions on the
Yes.
PUD.
Yeah.
Okay.
And as far as the tenant, they are staying. We're currently working on developing our 5-year lease. He's actually being able to add a little bit of storage area so he can make better use of his primary shop there. It's actually kind of split into 2 halves. One side is his bakery. The other half is his grocery business. So.
Okay. Good. Any other questions for the applicant? Nope. Thank you. Anybody else like to come forward on this item? Item 5C and 5D.
Richard Halverson. Again, I say support this. I think this is an acceptable use of TIF. I know I say when pigs fly would be the only time. Well, I think I saw one out of the corner of the eye, but of course, been out in the sun for a couple hours. But yeah, I think this is an appropriate use of TIF, and I would urge your support of it.
Thank you. Anybody else like to come forward?
Hello, Council. Nancy Loftus. I'm the attorney for the developer in this case. One of the things that the renderings don't show, and I went down there this morning, is when you look to the south, you've got all of the new row homes that have been developed as a part of the Antelope Valley project starting to spin out. And I worked a lot of that project with the bike trail system and also the MOPAC West 20 years ago. And we used to walk around and wonder, how long will it take and what will we see after we come in? And, you don't always think about, we do these big projects, what happens? Well, this is one. Now we've got a very interesting little project coming in. It's not little. But the facade improvements and the landscape improvements that we're looking at doing here are really going to make that a cohesive part of some of the new programs that went into effect or were built after we did that project. And I thought that that was an important part of this. It really is blending into a revitalized area. I do have to do a 5-year lease for the existing commercial tenant. We are retaining them. And that's all I have. Any questions?
Any questions for Ms. Loftus? Seeing none, thank you. Anybody else would like to come forward on this item today? Okay. Seeing none, let's move on to 6A.
No, we have to,
And then we can vote on the resolutions
Yep.
after that.
Okay. 6A, appeals by Nancy Seltzer of the Planning Commission's conditional approval of special permit 20013 to allow for a community unit plan CUP with associated waivers to setbacks, lot area, block length, and sanitary sewer design standards on property generally located at South 46th and Hillside Streets.
And Sonny, the applicant, working with Riga Engineering, has asked for an additional 1-week delay, continuing to work with Ben Higgins and Watershed Management on developing an appropriate watershed plan.
So you'd like to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we delay
Action item.
taking action only on item 6A until Monday, August 17th.
I'll second that.
Been moved and seconded by Councilman Christensen that we delay this until August 17th. Any questions?
I'd like to thank Councilwoman Raybold for walking through this and making sure that we had that information about the request for delay, because I think it's very important. There are a lot of issues to be worked out still.
Okay. Any other questions? Call the roll.
Raybold?
Yes.
Washington?
Yes.
Ward?
Yes.
Christensen?
yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Bowers?
Yes.
McGinnis?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
Okay, now we can vote on resolutions.
Item 5A, appeal by Daniel Sloan of Planning Commission's approval of special permit 20005 to allow for an alternative to imprisonment facility for up to 6 persons and residents on property generally located at 420 South 28th Street, introduced by Ward.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded by Councilman Christensen
And-
on 5A. And yes, Councilwoman Raybold.
I do have a couple of amendments to introduce, but I think we'd like an opportunity to have staff come up and address a few questions, if that's okay.
Okay.
David Carey, Director of the Planning Department.
So I guess I'll start. Could you
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about the history of group homes, and then all of a sudden we're working through these issues with AIFs?
So there's quite a bit of history there.
Okay.
So what I'll give you is kind of a quick run through of kind of how we got to this point. It was 2005 at that time that there was a change where there was a separation for the alternative to imprisonment use into a special permit, and then the group homes were handled separately. And kind of the purpose behind that action 15 years ago was basically meant to acknowledge that there are ADA concerns with persons with disabilities, that they are to be treated in a way that others wouldn't have that treatment. And so to do that, the alternative to imprisonment was a separated use, just to make sure that there was clarity there on a legal basis as far as Americans with Disability Act was concerned. I'm not an expert in that whole history, but that is the main reason why we have a separated out special permit that hadn't really become an applied for thing until this year, actually. So it took that long for that to happen.
Did the state provide any recommendations or guidelines? What type of determination by the state in terms of reimbursement? How did that all come about?
So at the time of that action back in 2005, there was no guidance for that. There was just the action to separate out the use and create a special permit for the alternatives to imprisonment. So what has happened since then, over the last few years, there's been more action at the state level to incentivize and to have funding for these programs to deal with the overcrowding in our prisons. So that more recent action by the state has pushed forward, identifying the demand for this type of situation and allowing for some housing for this purpose, as well as to have funding to back that up.
So can you tell us a little bit about how we transitioned from 3, and for this particular application, how did we land on a maximum of 6 residents.
So for the purpose of this application, the way we got to 6 was that there's a general rule that 3 unrelated can live in any residential unit in the city of Lincoln. That goes up to 6 if there is a duplex on a lot. So there was we're applying a generalized rule that in residential zone districts, that duplexes are allowed, and that up to 6 persons can be expected pretty much in any neighborhood at any time if the duplex was on the lot. So we use that number as kind of backing into kind of what would be expected or could be expected or should be expected by a neighborhood for the level of activity that could be on a lot. So that is how we got to the number of 6, and basically saying that that is a reasonable number of people in a residential building.
And is this something that the applicant had agreed to?
Yeah, yes, she has agreed to that.
Okay, and I know one of the recommendations is, and I believe the applicant has spoken to that, about having a staff person overnight. Would that allow that overnight staff person to stay in a supervisory role from, say, 7 p.m. to 7 a.m.?
So I think that any action that you would take today as a council, I think that you would want your action, your conditions of approval to be clear about requiring that and then allowing for that additional person to be in the structure, just for clarity's sake. Because that was not part of the Planning Commission action that's before you now. As far as having that additional requirement, as well as obviously then you end up with an additional person overnight in the building.
So I know that the applicant had offered in previous testimony to have, only if the permit were approved, would be willing to staff someone in a supervisory position covering the evening hours until morning. So I guess the applicant had agreed to something like that, and so we have to figure out how to incorporate that.
Yeah, and I think generally, just so there's some understanding of kind of how the planning process got to this point, I think generally the planning process is focused on the zoning part of this decision and trying not to get into the programming and other things, and where the state does have has the role there. And understanding, given the testimony, that there's, this use is different than some other programs as well. So really, what we were focusing on was kind of making sure that something made sense here on the decision-making process related to the zoning itself. But having said that, I would say that especially if there's agreement from the applicant, that I think that that's something that an action by the council could be done, and it would be something that we would be okay with.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, Councilor.
I'd like to interject one question here, just for clarity. And Mr. Carey, it may not be for you, it may be for Attorney C. If a staff person were in the home overnight, is that considered the 4th unrelated adult or 4th unrelated person in residence, or is that considered a person present in the house? And I'm trying to make a distinction between they're not living there, they're present in the house. Would that be legal under the 3 unrelated adults rule that we have in Lincoln?
If you use the word legal, I'm going to look at the attorney now.
See, now, yes, exactly. Wise man.
Tim
Mr.
C,
Carey.
Assistant City Attorney.
Yay.
I did that to you last week, so that's fair. I think the cleanest way to do it would be to call it out in the resolution that 1 staff person in addition to the 6 is allowed. But beyond that, if you had a staff person, I don't think we would claim that that person is making this their residence. They are there as an employee of the establishment. They're not living in this property, so I don't think we would qualify them generally as a resident. But again, cleanest way, I think, is to call it out specifically in the resolution.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Councilperson Show, do you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think I have 5 questions.
Okay.
And they kind of bounce between legal and planning. Let's go with Mr. Carey first. Mr. Carey, there was conversation about R4s and R2s. This property is currently zoned as
R2.
R2.
Yep.
And this is a special permit. And why are we here? Is it our role is to look at what and vote on what?
So the role of the council when it comes to changes of zone and a special permit, which is what is up for you today, is a zoning activity. It requires both the planning commission and the city council to approve a special permit. So that is why we're here today and why we're asking you for action. However, there's another part of this, which is there's an appeal that was brought before you. And so that is the specific reason why we're here today, that your role on an appeal was to take action on this item. That's just the short answer.
And the appeal, the waiver, is basically the number of people that can live in the house? Is that what we're talking about? And is that acceptable in the R2 zone?
So as a special permit, the city
yes.
has an opportunity to impose conditions of approval. And so through this whole process, when it's starting with the applicant and then the staff working with the applicant and then going to the planning commission and then working through to the city council on the appeal, basically this whole process allows for discussion about what type of conditions of approval should be attached or may be attached to a special permit. Unlike a conditional use approval where the conditions are already established in the code, you either meet them or you do not. You either get approved or you do not. In this case, there is some leeway there based on conditions. We like to try to keep them reasonable in nature. We have been focusing on limiting the number of persons that are living in the residence as part of the special permit. So there's been a focus on that. And so that is why we are still talking about the number 6.
Thank you. I think I'll transition to Mr. C if you don't mind. Right. We've had this conversation a few times before. And I think you told me once before that this is a land use issue.
It is.
And so our job here at the city council is to determine if this fits within our current guidelines? Or?
Right. Well, yes, let me go off a little bit of what David just talked about. This falls under the zoning code. Under the zoning code, you have 3 different kinds of uses. You have permitted uses in a particular zone, which means you can move into the property and make use of that property and no questions asked. There are conditional uses that David just mentioned, where there are a set of criteria that are called out in the code, and if you meet those criteria, then building and safety approves your use, and we don't appear before this council or the planning commission. Then there are special permitted uses, and special permitted uses are uses that are deemed to be appropriate for a given zoning area based on there being a certain set of conditions. But there's an additional step with special permits, and that is that the planning commission is initially given the opportunity to review those and determine if they are appropriate for the neighborhood, whether they're consistent with the comprehensive plan, whether they are consistent with the health, safety, and well-being of the neighborhood, generally speaking. And the planning commission is authorized to impose additional conditions that would be consistent with those 2 things. With special permits, then you also have the opportunity, or anyone has the opportunity, to appeal that to this council. That's how we are here today. So planning commission made a vote on this matter. It was then appealed. Now it's before you. You can look at the planning commission as a recommendation, but it's entirely up to this council at this point. But again, we're here looking at a special permitted use. Whether this is an appropriate use in this neighborhood is essentially what's before the council.
And the planning commission, in reviewing this information, said it was appropriate, and that was appealed.
Correct.
And I think I'm going to stop there. I'm going to stop there.
Other questions for staff at this time?
No, I do, yeah.
Okay.
It says housing inspection up here. So I want to ask about current rules on building safety and housing inspection in the city of Lincoln. Do they exist now? There was some conversation about safety and working utilities and things like that in the house. Do we have some type of inspection process in place now?
Certainly we have building codes that folks have to comply with. If you get a new building permit, you're going to be inspected to make sure your building complies with those. If there's a problem, you may be subject to inspection at that point in time.
So if I as a neighbor thought a building was unsafe in my neighborhood, do I have an opportunity to have someone inspect it, or does it have to be the property owner that does it? How does that process
There would be a
start?
complaint that would be made to Building and Safety, and then Building and Safety would handle it. And how exactly that process works, I'm not absolutely certain, so I don't want to comment on it.
I understand, but there's a process in place now to make sure all dwelling units are safe?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Now I'll stop.
Councilperson Rabel.
Well, I don't have a question. I'm ready to make a motion.
Okay, I got one more question.
Okay.
Do they have to get a rental permit, like any rental unit? So they will have to have an inspection done prior to
Occupancy?
occupancy? Or time of transfer, time of...
I can take this. This would be changing from a residential use to an alternative to imprisonment. There's a change in use which would entail a building permit, which would involve inspections that would go along with this. But I don't believe there would be per se a rental, because this is a use separate and distinct from a residential rental property.
So they wouldn't have to pay a license fee?
I think that's
A yearly
correct.
fee?
I think that's correct.
Okay.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
You just said something that triggered this, so thank you for the question. Building and safety, and I think this is going to tag on to what Councilman Shob asked. Building and safety, how frequently do they review properties for consistency with code? Once they've issued the permit and done the walkthrough on the final occupancy to clear the permit?
I don't know the answer to that, but I don't think if there's not a problem, I think you could say that in your residences, Building and Safety isn't coming out and inspecting your houses on any kind of a regular basis.
Okay.
I believe, I'll add to that, I know that largely, other than when there's a change in, there's a project or there's a change in use, that it is a lot of, can be complaints, so they would be notified of that. But otherwise, they're not proactively going out there and trying to find those
Right, they
things.
don't have a regular program of reviewing, okay.
Our building and safety.
Oh.
There he is.
It's like he's telepathic.
God, you guys, would you have a question for her?
Yes, yes, we do.
Okay.
Yes, oh, Mr. Blaha, thank you.
We just didn't recognize you with your mask.
Gentlemen, thank you.
Ted Blaha, Building and Safety, and if the question was asked in transit, you'll have to repeat it.
I'd like to know if you have a regular program of inspecting buildings after you've already done the final inspection on a permit. Do you go back to buildings and review them on a regular basis?
Buildings in general, or?
I think I was asking buildings in general now, but I'm really interested in this application. So there's been suggestions from the Neighborhood Association, from neighbors, that we move on this with the condition that we have regular inspections, or that someone be able to call Building and Safety if they had a complaint. And so I'm kind of curious how you would deal with a complaint that came in from a neighbor or anyone about this facility. What would cause you to say, we'll be out to inspect?
I guess there's a couple of things. If it's a housing code type complaint, maybe there's conditions of the structure itself. We would respond to any of those complaints like we would any other complaint. Come down and take a look. If it's I suppose if it was one of the tenants complaining with interior condition concern, we could come down and respond to that. Maybe there's facilities, whether it's plumbing facilities or heating, the heating equipment, something like that. That's they want to make the complaint, we'd come down. If it's a zoning complaint, i.e. the three unrelated rule, that's also within our realm of authority, I guess. And we try to respond to those as best we can as well. But we don't have a specific program where we inspect these on a regular basis. The closest analogy would be an apartment, a licensed apartment building, where we do have an annual inspection for any exterior or the common interior spaces. The only other type of thing is when a licensed apartment building changes ownership, then we do get to inspect the entire property inside the units with the certificate of compliance process.
All right, and do you do this kind of inspections on any group homes? Not AIF, but just any group homes?
Not because they're a group home, but we would respond to any complaint. We don't license those through our apartment licensing program, so no, we don't have a regular inspection program for those.
Thank you very much.
Councilman Show.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I waved my hands early on. Before she started talking, I was making hands. I think you answered my question to wrap up your last question. A few months ago, the city council approached had an opportunity, and we did some work toward inspecting rental units and establishing a database or a registry of sorts. And there's some more work we possibly can do there. But would a unit like this, a facility like this, fall under that category as a rental unit that would be under the purview of being registered and need to be inspected? I think you just said no.
We haven't had that discussion about this type of use. It could be a discussion topic, but no, that wasn't part of that initial discussion,
And that would
or what actually got passed last year.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. That's my question. Now,
Councilperson Ward.
Thank you.
Blaha.
Sorry, Mr. Shope. I actually have a question for Mr. C again. Thank you, though, Mr. Blaha.
Yay, Chad.
But don't leave, Chad. Thanks, Mr. C. So when you were defining some parameters for us to consider, I took note of sometimes we have to consider what's appropriate for the neighborhood beyond looking at the housing issue itself. Because I know that from some discussions, some of my colleagues have told me, and rightfully so, they view this as a housing issue for us to decide. So could you talk to us and help me understand those parameters of what we can do to talk about what we believe is appropriate as a city council person in terms of what we believe is appropriate for a neighborhood based on what we've gathered in this information gathering process. The reason I delayed this 3 weeks ago was that for that very reason. And some of us have spent a lot of time talking with the applicant. She's reached out, we've reached out, a lot of discussions with the neighbors and homeowners. So I'm looking sort of for some guidance from you as to help us expand that decision of looking at opening up our blinders beyond the housing issue, yes or no? Does that make sense?
I think the question is, what guidance would I give in terms of conditions that we would consider in terms of making it appropriate for the neighborhood? Is that?
Well, and beyond that, just, that the gut check of what's appropriate as a public official to look beyond just the yes or no. Just because something is an ordinance doesn't make it right now, right? We're trying to fix this. So help us understand our authority to view this differently as a yes or no kind of. To me, it's very gray.
Well, a couple things come to mind. One, you do have the authority to add conditions to the special permit. That's part of a special permit. That's inherent in the authority of the planning commission or the city council. It's the scope of those conditions, I think, that we need to be somewhat cautious about.
Mm-hmm.
Those should relate to land use. So things we talk about in land use are parking, density, setbacks, things that impact the nature of the neighborhood around it. Those are the really sort of the meat and potatoes variety of conditions that we would impose. I think it's easy to hear about regulating and hear about the fact that the state doesn't have regulations in place, and that's a fact. But keep in mind that this is in terms of the financial component of this, the fact that there are state dollars involved. That is a state program, and to take that on as a city to start regulating how the state does its business and how the state spends its money is, I would advise against that. I think it gets outside this, probably the scope of a city council. I think I would leave it at that. Are there more specific questions that come to mind?
Oh, that's helpful. That's helpful. I was looking for some ways to view this not with blinders on. So that's really helpful. Looks like Mr. Carey, would you have advice as well?
I'll answer a question I wasn't asked. That's probably not the smartest thing to do. But I guess I would just add to what Tim was saying, just to make a point about that we do have the special permit is in our code. So it going into this, has been considered, at least in the past, as a use that is appropriate somewhere in our city. Being very clear that there are not specified regulations about how to condition those things. So, but the process, as Tim just said, allows for that to happen. I would also kind of just reemphasize that the city council in this case obviously can approve or vote down what is before you. So you have that purview already. And I think the conditions, like Tim said, if they're within kind of the confines of the local ordinance world, those options are open to you as part of those actions that you have the right to take right now.
Very good. That's very helpful, both of you. Thank you. And the only other question I have is for Mr. Chair. Do we go back to what's before us before motions, or when do we speak?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you both very much.
And
Thank you.
I would like to make a motion to amend number 1. It's to add conditions regarding staffing, parking, and contact information.
Moved, but are we amending a motion that's not on the floor yet?
It is on the
Don't-
floor.
Don't we have to first
I'm-
look at
I'm-
the 5A itself
Okay.
before we go back to?
We have
5A has
read.
been moved.
It's been moved.
5A's
and
been moved and you're amending it.
No. Oh, I'm sorry. I
It
thought
it
was
has
a
been
vote.
moved.
Yes. Right.
And I'm making a motion to amend, and
He
I just
moved
need
it.
a second.
I seconded it. She's amending it.
Okay.
No, I know.
Proper order.
Can I ask a question about the
Do
amendment?
we hear a second?
Oh,
He needs a second first.
oh, let's get a second. Okay.
Is
I'll
there a second?
I will second.
Okay, then
Okay.
I would like to speak
Seconded by
first,
Senator
Sandra.
Washington.
Okay. We've heard a lot about land use. And why are we here and why are we doing what we're doing today? I can tell you that being a city council member for a few years now under my belt, I feel like we are land use are us. Every issue that comes before us, a good majority of them, not every, I'm sorry, we have to deal with land use and development. I can tell you that every single one of my council members has worked with neighbors, neighborhoods, developers. I think of Councilman Bowers just recently really worked closely with the neighbors and the developers to come to agreement over a development on Holdridge Street. I think that's part of our job, is to reach out and hear both sides of a story and try to come up with a plan that will work and succeed. Now, this is a very unusual issue that we're dealing with, and it's something new to all of us. It's something that we have never had to deal with. We've heard from many neighbors that I trust and know and believe that have genuine concerns, not for themselves, not for their property values. They're honestly concerned in making sure that we open our community to those that are reintegrating into our community after having served their time, and so that they are successful and they do succeed. That's number one. There's not one person here that does not believe we need to help these individuals. We know there's overcrowding in our jails. We have to help these individuals to succeed. And we have to put safeguards in place to make sure that the neighbors can work successfully with these other neighbors. We know the state of Nebraska did not come up with standards. I want to tell you, I think everybody in here is a Nebraska taxpayer, right? We want to make sure that our taxpayers are getting the services. Most importantly, those that we want to be reintegrated in our community succeed, and they don't recidivate, because that costs all of us taxpayers a lot more money. So the goal is to make sure they're getting the services, the training, the programming they need to succeed. So let me jump into these 4 conditions that were added to this resolution. These are conditions that have been agreed upon by the legal counsel and the applicant in discussion with the neighbors. And the reason why I say it's something that's been agreed upon, because we deal with land use. Every time we go out to a developer can say, well, my setback is this. I only have to give them a 20-foot setback. They sit down and talk with the neighbors and say, hey, you're too close. We need to have greater distance. And so that's the give and take with the neighbors that we see all the time. We see neighbors say, I want a greater setback. I want more screening. I want a fence to keep this development and my children safe. We hear that all the time. This is a negotiation. The law can say very clearly, your setback is 20 feet. But when we go out to the neighbors, they wanted a greater setback. They work with the developer, they come to a conclusion, they work out solutions, and that's exactly what we have in this motion to amend. And I just want to touch briefly on the 4 conditions that we've added. This permit approves an alternative to imprisonment facility for up to 6 persons and at least 1 staff member. 1 staff member. This is something that the applicant has agreed upon, 6 people. Number 2, the facility shall be staffed with that 1 staff person from the hours of 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. Number 3, this is something that Ms. Arciaga has said time and time again. I have given people my contact information. They can call me. And so that just codifies what they have all agreed on already. The permittee shall provide the contact information for the person responsible for the property to Building and Safety and the neighborhood association, including a phone number where said person can be reached. And Ms. Arciaga has offered that time and time again. The other thing that was agreed on during the planning process, the permittee shall provide sufficient parking for 6 residents and any staff to include at a minimum of 4 off-site parking spaces. So these are things and terms that have already been agreed upon. However, what we're doing is incorporating them in this first motion to amend, which is a substitute amendment. And that's all I have to say.
Okay. Councilperson Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to speak to the amendments, which I can support the conditions, but if we could, not without talking just first, that I would not support this special permit, and here's why. I can support your conditions. I'm not sure they go far enough, but I'll see how the discussion goes. I think to Councilwoman Raybold's point, none of us here do not support the women in the current transitional home. We all do. This has not been, just to be clear, a NIMBY issue. I have spent countless hours, as a lot of you have, talking to the neighbors. They care about the women in that home, as do I, as does everybody up here, and I'm sure everyone in this room. That is not what this issue is about today, so let's be clear about that. I've been a volunteer advocate to a man in a group home. I know some of you in the audience have done the same thing. This is not about not caring about those services for those women or men being served in these transitional homes across Lincoln, and we don't even know how many exist right now. What I want to tell you is what I have trouble with is the one that that I feel that this neighborhood is being punished because we're not getting it right. We're trying to get it right. We put a moratorium in place, and it's not retroactive. And so now we put in a position after these neighbors and homeowners have spent all of this year doing their due diligence and research to help us get it right, and we can't grandfather them into this moratorium. And so it's a fairness issue at this point. And so that's why I'm asking my colleagues, take off your blinders and look at this, and how fair is that? It doesn't mean we don't want those women taken care of, that we don't believe in those services, but just think about that for a moment. And the irony of it all is these neighborhoods in Lincoln are the neighborhoods that embrace these types of services. And this neighborhood has done their homework, and they have asked us to look at this. And I know the applicant has done her due diligence as well. And it's not about those relationships that aren't working. Those can work. But think about the moratorium we just put in place last week. Everybody else that has applied cannot do that now, and we don't even know where the other homes exist. Just because it exists does not make it right. We have got to make it right. And so these conditions may go far enough. I don't know, but I'll be willing to consider them and listen to the rest of this discussion. Thank you very much.
Councilperson Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also think that this is a fairness issue. I agree with my fellow councilors. Ms. Arciaga has applied for this and been working on this AIF application for months. And when she put her application in, there was one set of rules, and they were not very robust at all. And I think we saw that they needed additional items discussed, and I am grateful for the time that we've had to discuss all of the issues that go around with AIFs. I've learned a lot in the last month. With that said, I feel it is unfair to move the goalpost on someone who has put an application in. It's only because another applicant on the docket today withdrew that we only have one in front of us. The conditions that are being discussed now, I believe, are good conditions. I would add one more, and so this conversation is not going to be over in the next 5 minutes for those of you wanting this conversation to move. And I feel the conditions that we have discussed in the last couple of weeks and put down on paper are very close to what we will probably end up with when we get through the moratorium. I'm sure there are other issues that we will have on the table when we are talking about a moratorium, which we cannot put into place today because they deal with density and spacing, and we only have one application, not a whole program. So I know that we won't have gotten this to perfection tonight. But I feel like we are so very, very close, and we have probably picked up as many of the conditions as have been offered to us by the neighbors and by staff as we can tonight. And so, because I believe it is a fairness issue about the application in front of us and not wanting to move the goalpost further down the field, and because the applicant has told us that they will accept reasonable conditions added into this permit, what we will have, if we agree to this permit, what we will have in Lincoln is something that is not actually the same exact thing. We will have someone who is operating an AIF, or we could have someone operating an AIF with a special permit. And in the future, we might have people operating AIFs under a different set, under a program which might not entail a special use permit. I do understand that there will be a difference, but I am leaning toward approving this one because of change of rules.
Go that way.
Yes, Councilperson Christensen.
I move that this question be divided into 4 parts, the 4 parts that were provided to us. And that's an automatic that takes place now because according to the council rules and ordinance, each one of these can stand on their own and be voted on separately. So that's what I've requested.
Oh.
I would like legal to come and challenge and ask the chair to consider if these are conditions that have been agreed upon by the applicant themselves. Why are we doing this, Roy?
Okay.
I want the question divided.
Excuse me, yes.
Yeah.
Would you come forward, or city council?
Okay.
Attorney?
The truth.
I've not looked at my Robert's rules today, but
Our city attorney?
I think the question is to Councilwoman Raybould. They do stand on their own. I think. I don't think they were introduced as a package necessarily by the applicant. I think the councilman is able to make that motion to divide them. And again, I think none of them depend. They don't depend on each other. So I think they could be voted on individually.
We have a motion.
Well, it's an automatic.
It's an automatic.
Right.
Automatic.
But I'm
And
just
the
asking you
reason-
why
And the
when they've
reason
agreed
is,
on.
I can support
Hold on.
one of these, but not all of them.
Hold
Well,
on for a second.
but
I'm
it
not
doesn't
calling
matter
on
if you
yet.
support them.
Wait for a second, Jane.
The applicant does.
I got a question. Does this, does it need a second?
No.
Not the,
Does it have debate?
does it have debate? I suppose well, the motion to divide doesn't have debate.
Right, so we can't, so we got to make a.
I think you have to rule that it's an appropriate motion and then move forward with the, considering them each separately.
Okay. So it is a valid motion, and we will move on to voting on these separately.
Each one of the conditions, 4 conditions.
Let me make a comment. Frankly,
Can we?
for me, it doesn't matter whether Ms. Arciago has agreed or not. It's whether I'm willing to vote yes or no on each one of those individual things. So in order to be able to vote my conscience, I want these separated, and so they are.
Sony, do you have these separated into the 4?
Well, I have it within the resolution, but I can call them separate.
Okay. And would others like to speak on this?
I guess I have one question. If we're going to vote on these separately, are we going to have discussion on each of these separately, or are we
Yeah,
discussing?
we could.
We can discuss separately.
Okay. Because before we
We'll
go.
let her call, okay.
Do we have to make a
We're
vote
gonna have her
on
call.
the separation?
Nope.
Okay.
No.
It's like calling the question.
Yeah.
That's right.
So we call each one individually, and then we can have a discussion. Is that okay? Okay.
Okay. And just for clarification, I'm going to read the items that Councilwoman Raybould had read earlier. So item 1 is the permit approves an alternative to imprisonment facility for up to 6 persons and at least 1 staff person.
Right.
Introduced by Raybould.
Okay.
It's already introduced. We just have to.
Yeah, it's already introduced.
Debate
So
it
we're
and
just
vote it.
dividing
Okay,
this.
we just need to vote.
Any questions on the 1 staff?
I have a question.
Yes.
I think this might be a question for you, Mr. C. If this one gets approved, the maximum allowable will be 6 residents plus 1 overnight staff, and we do not approve the overnight staff from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., are we then saying that there has to be an additional staff, or does that just provide the flexibility to have an additional staff member?
I think this would allow you to have 1 additional staff person that doesn't count against your maximum of 6 in the building.
So that one does not mandate an additional staff person.
Doesn't mandate,
just
it
allows for
allows.
flexibility of 1. Okay, thank you.
Correct.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
What, just to clarify, was the clerk reading number 1, which
Yes.
was one of the,
Yes.
or could it be read again, please?
I understand it.
We asked
She's
it to
reading
be-
number 3 from our email.
Yeah.
No, don't
But
read.
from the amendment, I mean. Could
Read
we
the
have it read
amendment.
again, please?
You have the amendment?
I do. But
The permittee,
Would you
the
like me?
facility shall be staffed overnight from the hours of 7 p.m. to
That's-
7
That's
a.m.
the
Number
second
2.
one.
That's number 2.
We're still doing the first one.
Oh, overnight staff.
Is it
Oh,
is
it
it
does-
item number 1 on page 2 of the amendment?
It's
That's
item
my
number 1.
question. Is that correct?
It is.
It says this, it's
Okay.
exactly what Sony read. This-
Yeah, that's, I'm just clarifying. Is
Yes.
that what we're voting on?
Yes.
Thank you.
You need to clarify for me again.
It's page 2, number 1.
Right.
Okay, thank you very much.
Would council like me to read that one more time?
Thank you, that would be great.
Number 1 is this permit approves an alternative to imprisonment facility for up to 6 persons and at least 1 staff person.
Any other questions? Please call the roll.
Ward,
No.
Schob,
yes.
Washington,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
Raybold,
Yes.
McGinnis.
Yes.
Motion carried 6-1. Number 2, facility shall be staffed overnight from the hours of 7 p.m. to 7 a.m.
I have a question.
Yes, you have a question?
I think I'll direct this to Councilwoman Raybould, if that's okay, and
might popcorn it out a little bit.
Breaking the rules.
What would be the intended person of having, what would be the intent of having someone there from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m.?
I think, I know the applicant had talked about it. I think a number of the neighbors had addressed their concerns that the house does need to have additional oversight. Not to say that Ms. Arciago's facility would be a facility that would not have oversight, but based on previous houses that have attempted the same thing before the AIFs became known, that they failed to succeed because some individuals that have left incarceration did not get the care that they needed to maintain their sobriety. And so the individual supervision, as the applicant has agreed to provide, should her permit be approved, would provide that added assurance to the neighbors and to the other residents that this house is a sober house and it would be maintained as such, and that there would be law, order in the facility.
So,
and I guess the last item, that the individuals in the house would indeed follow all the rules and regulations of the house that they probably signed on when they were permitted to join the house.
So essentially, the main job duty would be supervision of the house?
Supervision of the residents in the house to make sure that they were in compliance.
I think what makes me nervous about that is I did a lot of research on this, and I'll read just a quick statement here from an article from Michigan Prisoner Reentry Initiative, a guide to evidence-based prisoner reentry practices, and it states that it should be also noted that supervision strategies that only increase the level of supervision have not been found to reduce recidivism. In fact, increased surveillance actually increases the likelihood of detecting technical violations because it provides more frequent opportunities for interaction and observation. Moreover, there is no evidence that increasing supervision alone leads to fewer crimes. And I think that the other statement that I want to make with that is, I really dug in and I did a lot of research on this. I looked at the 3 different levels offered by probation, including the transitional living halfway house, transitional living with programming, and transitional living without programming.
Could you take your mask off so we can hear you clearly?
Is that better?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's better, yeah.
I went through and I looked at the different service options available through probation, and there was the transitional living halfway house, which is under the category of treatment, setting, facility-based, facility licensed, as required by Nebraska Department of Health and Human Services. Then the other 2 are listed as non-treatment, the setting as residential, and I know that we call this an alternative to incarceration facility, but the setting is listed as residential, and the facility license is as required by local municipal code. And this is related to the staff person. Because when we look at the service expectations, when we look at the service frequency and length of assistance and staffing through the transitional living halfway house, there must be a clinical director, appropriate licensed credentialed professionals working within the scope, and then there's staff ratios of 1 to 10 for direct care, 2 awake overnight staff for 13 or more individuals, and an on-call availability of direct care staff and licensed clinicians 24/7, as opposed to the non-treatment regulations listed out through probation, where their staffing is lists out just some requirements for what the house manager should be, but there's no specific ratios, and that is because it's not a clinical service. And I think that kind of goes back to one that makes me the most nervous, is if we codify that we have to have a higher level of care and a more restrictive level of care for a non-treatment facility, I'm worried that we're going against the best practices that have been listed out for an increasing restriction, not for a mental health reason, not for a substance abuse reason, not for a medical reason, and not even for a criminal justice reason, because these individuals are not mandated to stay at this facility. And I think that that regulation is one that makes me the most nervous in getting behind. If Ms. Arriaga wants to do that and include that in and work out an agreement with the neighborhood, I think that that's appropriate, right? But what makes me nervous is codifying that in and saying that we're going to make that happen, because I don't know if it's necessarily appropriate for the level of care that we're talking about.
So I have a question for you. You did not share with us the recidivism rates. I think that those were what the studies were intended to show.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have the recidivism rates with me, but the consistent theme of, through my work as a therapist and through my work as a social worker, in working in a variety of settings from group homes and locked facilities and in nursing homes, is we always try to go for the least restrictive level of care. And that is not because it's a cost-saving measure. It's because it's a dignity issue. It's because that it allows people to have the most freedom that they can while still getting the services that they need.
And so you feel that this additional supervision would impede their road to recovery, or their, I guess, the independence that they need to succeed? I'm not sure what.
Yeah, I think that I appreciate everyone's willingness and Ms. Arriaga's willingness to make this criteria regulation happen. I'm just nervous about voting in a regulation for something that goes against what is the best practices and the ethics of providers when we're not talking about a mental health, substance abuse, medical, or criminal justice issue. In saying that we are now saying that you have to have this when we are always trying to look for the least restrictive level of care. And so, like I said, if Ms. Arriaga, and I don't know what that looks like legally, if signs an agreement with the neighborhood, I don't know what that looks like. I'm just nervous about codifying that into this agreement through our power.
And I guess what I'm not clear on what you're saying is that how does this demonstrate that this is not a best practice? Because I mean, clinically you would want a success rate. You should have a success rate from those individuals in a halfway house, in a different type of group setting with non-supervision. I guess recidivism rate is one, and the success rate we want to ensure. The one thing since I haven't had a chance to have my say on this is something that matters to the neighbors. I can tell you when, and with all respect to you and the work that you're doing, when I had more time to research it myself, I was deeply troubled. And my first reaction was to deny completely this, just like Councilwoman Ward was her reaction to deny, until we put some parameters, some guidelines, some safety net that would work with the facility. And Ms. Arciaga is also a therapist. And it was something that the neighbors had approached you and you had felt comfortable including, because you, in her efforts to be a good neighbor, she knew that that mattered to the neighbors, and it was something that she was willing to do, which I truly commend you for saying that. So, but she's also a therapist, and if she felt that it would impede the recovery or the success of these individuals, she, as a therapist, would never consent to something like that. Her goal is to have this facility be as successful as possible, not only for those residents, but as successful in the neighborhood. And I think that's something that we must keep in mind. A success of the residents, but it has to be a success in the neighborhood, because they want to be a good neighbor as well. So I think I understand your concerns. I have not heard enough evidence to sway me, data-wise, recidivism rate or success rates, to say when we have another clinical therapist willing to go forward with something like that.
And I would like to make the clarification that what what Tina does for this facility, that's her judgment call in terms of adding another provider or not. And if she wants to make that agreement, I think that's great. I'm just worried about codifying that and making that happen. When we look at the levels of care, we are making this more restrictive than what probation in the state has mandated by making another person be there 24/7. Jane, this has been hard for me too. I mean, I have a lot of friends, a lot of people that I really, really respect that have brought up a lot of concerns, and that has really made me doubt my own judgment and doubt my own analysis of these things, because there's so many people that I respect, so many people that I share a lot of values with that have concerns. And so I don't want that to come off. I don't want this question of, is this appropriate, to come off as me being dismissive to the neighborhood. But I think that I would not be doing my job if I did not question if this was an appropriate regulation. And I'll be done rambling after I say one more sentence, I promise. And that is, I think we all agree that there should be some more regulations or whatever, but I think that it's what those regulations look like is kind of the key that we're all looking for.
Okay, Councilperson Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councilwoman Raybold and Bowers, thank you. Councilman Bowers, thank you. I have a couple of comments and a question. I totally understand the best practice of providing the greatest amount of agency for individuals in transitional facilities, and I'm going to lump them together. And I realize that whether it's a halfway house or it's an AIF, they're different levels of care. I believe that AIFs have a curfew. When Ms. Arciaga applied or registered the home as an AIF with the state, the agreement is to provide clean and sober housing, and that there is a curfew for the residents. So there has to be some way of checking that they're there when 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock rolls around. So I'm going to trust that that is the case, that that's going to happen. I also heard Ms. Arciaga talk about programming being provided in the house, not mental health services, but programming, which would have staff in the house. So I know that at some point during the day, there's staff in the house, and there's some way to manage knowing if someone's met curfew. Overnight, if she agrees, I think that's fine. If you've offered that, that's fine. Because this is a special use permit. This is a one-time. This is not the program. As a program, I too would have some concern about limiting the free agency of individual clients in these homes. But as a single permit where the applicant themselves has said, this is what I will do, I'm all right with that.
Can I, I'd like to respond to that. When we talk about curfew, when we talk about making sure that people are meeting curfew, these are individuals that aren't mandated to, I mean, they can go and live on their own and with just having contact with their officer that they're working with post-incarceration. And so I feel like that we are essentially putting more stringent regulations on someone just because they are choosing not to go back to the situation that they might have once been in, or because they can't go back to the situation that they were once in. Mm-hmm. And there's systems in place for those individuals who are under supervised release to meet their curfew. And just because that they're living there doesn't mean that they're mandated living there, and that is the only option available for them. I don't know if
I totally understand what you're saying about, I think I understand, I should say that, because I may have read them incorrectly, but I thought that AIFs, and that people can choose to live where they want to live, but if they've agreed and said, this is where I want to live, there is a curfew in this facility.
And I think that if that was the concern, then there would have been 24-hour supervision mandated by probation in the state to make sure that that curfew is being met, right? I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if, being post-incarceration, some of those folks might have a curfew, and even not living in one of these homes, they're still able to prove that they're meeting curfew through whatever way.
Okay. Councilperson Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a condition that I can support. I appreciate what's been said by my colleagues, but I do think what we have is something I've heard as a condition that the neighbors have wanted and homeowners have expressed to me. And it's also something that the applicant has agreed to, so thank you for that. I think we have a differing professional opinion from Councilman Bowers and our applicant. And while I appreciate that, this is an important condition. We'll have time when we go to work during the time of the moratorium to change this if we want. And so this is not a permanent, if we find that it's not something we want to move forward as we work with the planning department during the next 90 days, then we can change this. So I would just plan to support this condition and move forward if we could.
I just want to clarify one thing about saying that we have a difference of professional opinion, and I would say that we have a difference of professional perspective. I think Ms. Arciaga is looking at it from a micro perspective in terms of what's appropriate for her program, and I'm looking at it from more of a macro perspective and a policymaker that could have bigger effects than just one agency. So I don't know if it's necessarily a difference of professional opinion, but maybe difference of perception in our roles right now.
Okay. Any other? Okay. Please call a roll on the motion, which is number 2, correct? You want to read that again?
Number 2, facilities shall be staffed overnight from the hours of 7 p.m. to 7 a.m.
Go ahead and call the roll.
Shob. Yes.
Christensen.
No.
Ward.
Yes.
Raybold.
Yes.
Washington.
Yes.
Bowers.
No.
McGinnis.
No.
Motion carried 4-3.
Okay. Number 3.
Number 3, the permittee shall provide the contact information for the persons responsible for the property to Building and Safety and the neighborhood association, including a phone number where said person can be reached.
Questions, comments? Yes, Mr. Shob.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I love the first part of this because part of our work on rental housing is establishing a registry of owners of property. So having the property owner register with Building Safety, I think, is spectacular. I'm a little concerned about also sharing that with the neighborhood association, and I'd like to speak with someone from legal. I have a question about this.
Yes.
Sorry, Mr. C. Mr. C, my question's a little bit weirder and longer, and I'm going to stall a little bit to give you time to get there and
I
get
appreciate
set
it,
up.
man.
Yeah. Thank you for coming back up. So we're talking about condition number 3, register with Building and Safety, sharing contact information, and also sharing that with the neighborhood association. If the applicant or the operator of the facility doesn't do that, what are the penalties? If they violate any one of these 4 conditions, what are the penalties?
I suppose if you violate one of the 4 conditions, you put the permit at risk. That's the most logical. That's the most obvious thing to say.
So if the applicant registered with Building and Safety and the president of the homeowners association changed and they didn't get the new contact information, that could fall under the category of a violation and risk their application?
It could fall under the category of a violation, yes.
That's a hypothetical.
Yep.
Thank you. That was my question.
Okay. Yes, Councilperson Christensen.
Do neighborhood associations have legal standing in governing our neighborhoods?
No, not in governing neighborhoods, Councilman.
Councilperson Raybold.
Well, again, this is something that the applicant had. Not for the Woods Park. Okay, thank you. That's okay. It's something that was discussed, and I think
Thank you,
what
Mr.
we're looking for is for her facility to succeed. She has offered to respond to any issue, complaint by the neighbors, trash, maybe disorderly conduct that may be occurring. She needs to know. If the neighbors call police, that's a registered complaint. That would be a strike against her. And that is something I'm absolutely certain you want to avoid at all cost. She doesn't want the police called. She doesn't want building and safety to come out and find that some critical health issue is not working. She doesn't want the health department to come out either to investigate, because those are official complaints that would be held against her in the operation of her facility. This is something that I know you had offered to make sure that the contact information was out there so that you would be called before they called the police. I think it's essential that we don't have our police running here and there for a situation where someone blocked an alley, or the situation where someone said, you have to put the trash in a different container or something like that. Police should not be called for that. It matters to her operations and management that the facility is managed well. She's an example, and she wants to do the best job, and this is something that you had agreed to make available in one fashion or another so that the official complaints would never get filed. And that's why it's important to move forward with this.
Okay. Councilperson Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Councilwoman Raybold, I hear exactly what you're saying. I'm just not sure if it should be a requirement. I think the applicant would probably do that out of the courtesy of her application, but making this a requirement that could fail and jeopardize the entire waiver is the only thing that concerns me. I think maintaining good lines of communication is very, very important. I'm not sure if we should require the applicant to maintain great lines of communication with a neighborhood association.
I
appreciate what you're saying.
Yeah,
Yes.
no, I hear what you're saying too, and I can assure you that it matters to the neighbors, it matters to the neighborhood, and it matters to making sure that this facility succeeds.
Councilperson Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to support this condition as well. In my conversations with the homeowners and neighbors, this was important to them. And I recall in the last public hearing that our applicant did agree to this, and I understand Councilman Shobe your concerns. Thank you for bringing those forward. But I do support this. I think that if it's a way forward, and to, if I may just credit Mr. Sloan, who said today, if we could have a good facility, this would be one more condition that would help us get there. I'd like to codify it so that we don't lose track of it, and that we all know what the expectations are of one another. And that was, once more, the reason I delayed this for 3 weeks, was to work through some of these issues. So I would be in support of the third condition. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Councilperson Washington.
I am going to, I totally understand the need to have if we're going to make this a city program, to have a city department be the recipient of the contact information. But I am concerned, like Councilman Shobe, that a small snafu in getting contact information to a neighborhood association could be a mark against them in the permitting process, and they could lose their permit because the neighborhood association didn't get the numbers, the phone number. And I completely support the need and desire of the neighborhood association to have that contact information, but I don't want to put the future permit at risk because neighborhood association officers change on a regular basis. And
So I have a question.
Yes.
Would you be willing to offer a friendly amendment to item number 3?
I would offer a friendly amendment.
So that It reads, "The permittee shall provide the contact information for the persons responsible for the property to building and safety, including a phone number where said person can be reached."
I would do that. That would be my friendly amendment. And then I would encourage Ms. Arciaga to continue to keep communication lines open with the neighborhood association and her neighbors.
Do I hear a second on the amendment?
Second.
Been moved and seconded that we strike "and the neighborhood association," correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay, seeing none, you want to call the roll on number
No,
3?
you have to amend the.
Oh, the motion,
Amend, yep.
yeah, on the
A friendly
amendment
one?
to strike the
There's no
neighborhood
such thing as a friendly
association.
amendment,
Oh, that's
actually.
coming.
Okay, call the motion to strike the neighborhood association.
Ward,
Yes.
Washington,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
Raybold,
Yes.
Schob,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
McGinnis.
Yes,
Motion carried, 7-0.
okay. Now we're ready to call the amended motion number 3 without the neighborhood association.
Correct.
Okay.
Can I make a comment?
Sure.
I think Councilwoman Washington said it very well. And it's really good advice. So going forward, just because we have removed "and the neighborhood association," it's critical. You hear it, you know it, we all know it, we see it. We want this to succeed. Good lines of communication are everything. Even though we're taking it away, you should reach out. You should be one of the members on the neighborhood association and be on their board because you want it to succeed and you want to be the best example in our city and the model that we can, showcase to other municipalities on how you've made it succeed. So just because we've stricken it doesn't mean it's not really good advice. And I will support this, making sure the contact information is available.
Okay, any other comments? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Bowers,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Schob,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
Washington,
Yes.
Raybold,
Yes.
McGinnis.
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0.
Okay, move on to number 4.
Number 4, permittee shall provide sufficient parking for the 6 residents and any staff to include at a minimum 4 off-street parking spaces.
Yes, Councilman
I
Christensen.
have a question for the applicant. How many off-street parking spaces exist currently?
In front of the house?
Off-street?
Oh, off-street. There, we have a double stall garage, and then we're gonna put in a double parking pad in the backyard.
Oh,
So
that's
before.
4. Thank you. That's all.
And again,
Yes,
I
Councilman Rabel.
Again, I just want to say that this is something that the applicant and her legal team had worked out with planning.
Okay,
And
Question, please?
yes.
Thank you,
You
Mr.
do
Chair.
too.
Oh, do you want to go first?
No, go ahead.
I was for the applicant, but the time frame, I mean, is that in place with the planning department?
I think if this passes, I should do it right away.
Before it goes.
Okay, okay. Right away means right away. I mean, okay. Okay, all right, very good, thank you.
Okay, no, I think it's fine. This says there only needs to be 4 off-street parking spaces and not for 4 plus staff. Okay,
The ratio count is actually 1 space for every 3 residents and then 1 space for every 2 employees. So that would
pretty
give
much
you
put it
enough.
close to 4, yeah.
Yeah, it would give you
Okay.
enough for 8 people.
Okay, any other questions?
Or 10.
Please call the roll.
Christensen,
Yes.
Raybold,
Yes.
Washington,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Schob,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
McGinnis.
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0.
Okay, I would like to make a motion to amend number 2. And the purpose of the motion is to add conditions regarding inspections and transferability of property.
Wait a second, yes.
Number 5.
I move to divide the question.
Wait a second, hold it before,
You know
Thank
what, I'm
you.
sorry.
We have
I
number
realize we have not voted on.
We have not
No,
voted
vote
on
the main
main
motion.
The main
Well,
motion.
each one of those individually were the,
And those are the
Components.
changes we made to the main motion.
Yes,
Is
I
that
I
correct?
apologize.
And so,
yeah.
Way to go, Tim, way to go.
I would check with the clerk, but I think where we're at is the substitute amendment hasn't been
Correct.
voted
Correct.
on yet,
Right.
so we need to do that before we move on to number 2.
Thank you, I'm sorry, I jumped the gun.
mhm. Any other questions for the motion? Substituted motion as amended.
Yeah, please, can we clarify what we're voting? We're voting on 5A. I know, 5A.
No.
What about
Um,
on,
You're
James,
voting
got
on
it.
Change
The-
amended motion
Got it.
minus what we did on
Thank you.
changes we made.
those issues right there.
Thank you.
Okay?
Yes.
Any other questions?
You have edible?
Please call the roll.
Bowers,
Yes.
Raybold,
Yes.
Shob,
Yes.
Washington,
yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
McGinnis.
Yes,
Motion carried 7-0.
Okay,
I know. I'm thinking the same thing, Jane.
No,
here we go again.
Yeah.
Let's see if I get it right this
If I can
time.
Amend what we just passed.
A motion to amend number 2.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is to add conditions regarding inspections and transferability of property, and I think Councilman Christensen would like to divide this
We
one.
need a second first.
Oh.
Second.
Been moved and seconded by Councilperson Ward.
And now I move to divide.
So we're moving to divide. So
Okay.
we've got, okay,
Okay, I can talk about the 2 additional conditions. Item number 6 says, this special permit is limited to the permittee and not transferable with the sale of the property. And again, we heard from the applicant that they accept that term, and that is their intent, that they don't have any goal of selling it along with this special permit.
okay. Yes, Councilperson Christensen.
I completely support this.
Okay. Councilperson Washington.
I would like to, I'd like to speak to legal counsel. I just have, a
I think probably have the same question. so
Yeah.
this'll-
Yeah.
this'll
and
be quick.
maybe I should buy you a cup of coffee.
No, no, no.
'cause here you are. Maybe you would like some caffeine. All right. Typically, special use permits ride with the deeds. I realize this would be an unusual thing, but I am supportive of this. So why don't you tell me what the legal snafus, quicksand are?
Well, it's certainly unusual, because usually special permits run with land and they are transferable across the board. And so if I get approved for a permit to sell alcohol on site and my bar goes out of business, but the next person comes in, they can open a bar there and it doesn't come back before this board or anyone else. So this is certainly unusual. I can't say it's illegal, but it's certainly unusual.
Yes.
So that, because that really gets to the land use piece. And so what we are saying, when we usually, sorry, that goes to the land use. And so when we typically issue a special permit, we have said that this is an appropriate use of the land. And that can go with the deed.
Well, it doesn't even go with the deed. It's just a
It just-
it's just a matter of record.
It's a matter
so you
of
would
record.
Follow
Okay,
it up,
so
you
not
would
on the
follow
deed.
it with the Register of Deeds records that it would be on associated with that parcel.
So in this case, we would be saying not so much. We would
That's
say
what this would say
it's only good while the current
under this owner.
owner has the property. Okay.
Okay. Councilman Shob, are you okay?
No, I'm not okay. Somebody else. Yeah.
Well, I have a question of Mr. C. So there's nothing that would prohibit somebody who should buy it from the Arciagos for applying
Yes.
for an AIF permit, correct?
Correct.
So they could reapply, and they would have to demonstrate that the building, since it was vacated or sold, is in compliance with all the building code and safety issues, just like for any other AIF facility must comply with.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councilman Show.
And mine's a little bit more technical than that. So we're 7 civically minded city council members here, and Ms. Asiago owns her property for 25 years. She sells it. None of us are around. Nobody remembers any of this.
I'm probably still here.
Okay, you're still here. How do we make this automatically revert back to before the special permit?
How do revert back to, what do you mean,
the
Councilman?
permit, yeah. I assume it would revert back to, the permit would expire or some version.
If the permit expired, it would go back to being a residential use.
But
That's
if
how
there's
we
no
would
one
do it.
here to make that happen, how does it happen?
Well, it would show up if you came in for a building permit. They would check the records to see so if I came in and wanted to do an alternative to imprisonment facility on this, and I'm a new owner, and I turn in a building permit to make alterations to the building, that would show up in that review of the building.
But when I buy it, I saw it was an alternative to prison facility. I assume I can keep on doing that. I would never bother asking.
Well, you are on notice because it's in the record. You are in notice because this resolution, in whatever form it's ultimately approved or denied, would show up as a matter of record on the Register of Deeds site. So when someone does a title search and get you a title commitment, this is one of the documents they should be looking at.
Okay.
So you're deemed to be on notice at that point.
Thank you. I feel more gooder now.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, should we vote on number 6?
Yes.
Would council like me to read that one more time?
Sure. Could you? Thank you.
Number 6, this special permit is limited to the permittee and not transferable with the sale of the property.
Okay, call the roll.
Bowers.
Yes.
Christensen.
Yes.
Raybold.
Yes.
Schob.
Yes.
Washington.
Yes.
Ward.
Yes.
McGinnis.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Number 7, the facility shall be inspected every 2 years by Building and Safety to ensure compliance with the conditions of this special permit. If multiple violations are found during this said period, the City Council may, on the motion of one of its members and following a public hearing, impose stricter controls, a probation period, or revocation of this permit at that discretion of the council.
Okay. Any comments? Yes, Mr. Show.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to speak with the Building and Safety representative if he's available.
Chad Blaha, Building and Safety.
Hi, Chad. Thanks for coming up again. We're talking about requiring an inspection by your office every 2 years. Earlier, we passed a substitute motion, which required the applicant to register with Building and Safety. As we talked earlier last year, we went through a lot of this, and I think everyone that registered is also automatically in that inspection process, or do I remember that badly?
You do not. I think what you're referring to, though, is the comfort. The measure last year talked about rental units for single-family rentals and duplex rentals compared with apartment license rentals, where our current apartment license program already acts as a registration for those buildings that have 3 or more units. At that time, we were looking at the possibility of a rental registry for all rental units, whether they be single-family, duplexes, or 3 or more. It got amended a little bit at the time, so we don't have a true registry at this point. And so that's kind of what I think you're...
I think I was operating under the assumption we did have a true registry, and by requiring the applicant to register, those same rules applied. It sounds like I got my facts a little off.
Yeah, the way, I'll paraphrase, but the way it got adopted was if a 1 or 2 unit rental had complaints that resulted in violations, then we get to keep that contact information as a registry. But rentals that never have a complaint that results in a violation
They're not required
don't
to
get
register.
included on the registry.
Thank you very much. Thanks for clearing that up. I appreciate it.
Councilperson Raybold.
Thank you, Mr. Vlahak, for coming down. Okay, so how many AIFs does the Building and Safety currently inspect?
0.
Okay, so this would be your first, your one, your only, correct?
Yes, and any subsequent applications that get approved.
Okay, thank you. And I'm trying to think, your role with Building and Safety is really complaint-driven, correct? So with or without this language here, you would hear about code violations, complaints about the structure itself not being maintained, and other things that you typically get complaints about from neighbors, correct?
Also zoning violations.
And zoning violations. So what would be a zoning violation
No.
in this case?
Put me on the spot here. The 3 or more, we get a complaint that we get often is so-and-so address has more than 3 unrelated people living there. That would be a zoning complaint that we would investigate.
So if someone called and said, they have 10 people in that house, you would investigate, correct?
We would be obligated to go and investigate as much as we could. Oftentimes, in the case of the 3 or mores, it's the evidence is not easily attainable for us to move forward on. But yes, we would be obligated to do as much investigation as we could.
So let's go back to apartments and rental. We know for a fact that most of the landlords out in our city of Lincoln are good landlords, are diligent landlords, are responsive landlords. However, we do have some that seem to be chronically receiving complaints or violations. How many do you think those are that you have? Is it like more than 20, under 20? And then tell us how you manage those cases that are frequent flyers of violations and complaints.
I don't know that I could do a whole lot of justice to how many there are, but I can tell you what we do.
Okay.
If there is multiple violation properties. The code allows, like I said earlier, we do regular inspections, annual inspections on all exterior and common spaces within those apartment buildings that are licensed. If there are, depending upon how many units there are, as an example, if it's a 12-plex, and I don't know the exact number, but let's just say if it gets within that 12-month period, 2 or more complaints that result in a violation in the interior of the units, then that gives us authority to initiate a top-to-bottom all-unit inspection of that building.
Mm-hmm.
And we do that anywhere from, 8 to 15 times that they qualify for that.
8 to 15 times a month, a year? Or?
No, over the course of a year, we get there's about 8 or 12 or 15 or so. I think the most I've heard is about 14 in a given year period that those properties qualify under that requirement to get the top to bottom inspections.
Okay. And I guess this property is a little bit different, different classification, and so I don't think the requirement of having a review every 2 years is that onerous.
Right. What I guess my question as the Building and Safety Director is what specific are we going to be asked to inspect for? Is it strictly the apartment license is governed by our housing code that's adopted in Title whatever it is. And then also Chapter 538 of the Municipal Code that outlines, that kind of governs those inspections and where they're at. So I guess,
I think you said it very clearly, that it's zoning and building codes violation. That's what you do, and that's what we're asking you to make sure that there's no more than 6 individuals in the house, or unless there's a complaint. I mean, it's driven by that, and that, they are maintaining the house and the property as any other house should be maintained that rents out to individuals.
Okay. One clarification then by law, it says that you will ensure compliance and conditions of the whole special permit. So you have to make sure that there's somebody staying there between 7 and 7.
I guess
that's the way this reads. So right now you're ensuring the whole special permit.
if that's part of the special permit, we could receive a complaint that says they don't have an employee
Not there
there.
at 7.
So we could go and interview, but we don't have inspectors out in the community in the evenings.
Okay.
But that's a good question that you raised, but you could investigate, as you normally do, how often does the landlord come around? Do you have a supervisor at night, staff member at night? I mean, it just seems like a standard and routine question.
And that's what we
if it's complaint driven.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess that was we were thinking the same thing at the same time, Chairman, and I just wanted to recognize that it's saying that building and safety would ensure compliance with the conditions of this permit,
right,
which we just went through, so you're just going to count people, look at staffing or get the staffing numbers, make sure you've got the contact information, they've got the right amount of parking.
Mm-hmm.
Every 2 years.
Yep. Every 2 years. Okay. And then you could check the central heating if you wanted to.
Okay. Cancel person order.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just going to ask, given what you know about this project and the multiple discussions we've had over the last 3 weeks, if you thought every 2 years was suffice for an inspection, given how little we all know may or may not happen now.
I think, given that I'd probably want to read through the thing before I gave a real specific answer, but I think obviously the parking, it's either going to exist or it's not. If there are more than 6 people that the neighbors suspect are living there, we'll probably hear about it before the 2 years is up. Likewise, if a employee is a requirement of the special permit, I'm going to guess we are likely to hear from the neighborhood prior to that 2 years. So.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any other questions? Yes.
Unless you wanted to go first.
Go first.
So I just needed to make it clear in my head. So when you go out and you do an inspection, you're essentially just checking to make sure that there's an overnight staff, 24-hour contact information is up to date, and that there's parking there.
If those are the requirements of the special permit, then yes, and we would have to obviously maintain if there are more, we're going to have to maintain some sort of list of the other special permits that we are also enforcing on.
Okay.
So,
Councilperson Christensen.
What's the process right now if there are multiple violations at a residence for anything?
we just enforce, if it's just a regular residence, a single family residence not licensed through.
Or a multiple family dwelling, or any building.
Well,
where
if it's an apartment, if it's a licensed apartment building, if it's, like I said, if it's multiple violations, we go out and we have the ability to, if it hits that trigger, we can then inspect the entire building, all the units, whether they have complaints or not. If it's a unlicensed rental, either a single family or duplex, and there's a violation, we send a violation notice. They either comply or they don't. If they comply, we close the complaint or close the record. If they don't comply, we send a letter from a second letter that says we're going to refer it to law. If they continue not to comply, then we formally refer it to law for prosecution. And then it's up to the courts to decide.
So could that process just apply here without this language here?
Presumably, we'd be obligated to respond to any complaints that came in the same manner. Unless something is different about your ability to revoke this special permit with the apartment license, with the apartment license program, we at Building Safety would initiate the process and take care of the process for revoking that apartment license permit. In this case, we at Building Safety would not have the authority to do that because it's a special, it's not governed by the same rules. So that would be up to, if there were multiple problems, it would be up to you guys to revoke that permit. I don't know if that answers.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Councilperson Raybold.
Well, and I was going to just go to that. That's why it's specifically addressed. Just as we know the neighbors would be the first to find out about that it's not being staffed or there's more people in there, certainly we get an earful as city council members about that as well. And in terms of, we are hearing this, and then we would work with Building and Safety to do a follow-up on it. Knowing that that's why the language is there, that says on the motion of one of its members, following a public hearing, which would include the neighbors and the facilities owners to come in and address that. Just like you're saying, Building and Safety does not have the authority to do anything beyond what your scope is, but then we, as a city council, based on the combination of violations and whatever, would be able to bring that to a discussion and a public hearing again.
Okay. Councilman Christensen.
Question for law.
He thought he was out, and we pulled him back in.
Yep.
Get his steps in.
Mr. C., if this language in number 7 were not present, would there be any recourse at any point in time where the council could revoke the permit?
I believe so, just generally with special permits, yes. I don't know that this is absolutely critical, but it certainly makes it crystal clear.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes, Councilperson Washington.
Getting through the moratorium, we will be talking about all of these issues in greater depth. I am already forecasting some process where we have something like this for a program, and then we might have something, so a special use permit with the same thing, but they might end up in different places. Do you think there would be an issue of fairness? I know, I'm asking you to be a judge, not an attorney, pardon me.
I'll wear the black robe, it's okay.
Okay, all right.
She was foreshadowing.
Yeah, I was foreshadowing. So if we were to put this in place and then create a program that may have some kind of inspection program or process, would there be, would you think there was an issue of fairness if one special permittee came to city council and a group of people over here in this other pod had a different process where they didn't come to they wouldn't come to city council, they might go to Building and Safety?
I don't know if it's a fairness issue because you're operating under one set of rules now and you're foreshadowing that the rules might change.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's a fairness issue at that point. It's a timing issue of when you came in and what the rules of the game were when you came before the council.
Okay. And if we did not put something like this in place in this special use permit, but then created a program that had a process for review, inspection, whatever, would we be accused of shifting too much if we asked this permittee to agree to that review process?
I can only, I can't, could you be accused of it? Certainly. Is there validity to it? I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
Sorry.
I'm going to stop forecasting. And all right, thank you.
Yeah, we're going to have a long process ahead of us. Okay, any other questions on number 7? Would you want to read that again, Sony? And then we'll vote.
Yes. Number 7. The facility shall be inspected every 2 years by Building and Safety to ensure compliance with the conditions of the special permit. If multiple violations are found during the said period, the City Council may, on the motion of one of its members and following a public hearing, impose stricter controls, a probation period, or revocation of this permit at the discretion of the council.
Okay. Go ahead and call the roll.
Christensen.
No.
Raybold.
Yes.
Schob.
Yes.
Washington.
Yes.
Ward.
Yes.
Bowers.
No.
McGinnis.
No.
Motion carried 4-3.
Okay.
Now the main.
Main motion
Now
to
we need
amend
to
to.
vote on the main motion
To amend number 2.
with number 2,
Yeah.
with the
No,
changes.
no. You got to vote on this.
Thought we were voting on each one
No.
individually.
We
You
did.
did.
We
Now
did.
we got to vote on it.
The
as a
whole
packet.
thing
Okay.
is stuck together.
Bowers.
Yes.
Christensen.
Yes.
Washington.
Yes.
Ward.
Yes.
Raybold.
Yes.
Schob.
Yes.
McGinnis.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
Now,
Okay.
now we go back to the,
Voting on the public resolution.
then 5A,
As it's been amended a bunch?
as it's been amended.
Yes, that is
Okay,
correct.
you're right. That
Sounds
includes,
good.
that
We-
includes
We've
both
amended
these
it all
amendments.
down,
Does.
so where
Thank
we
you.
want it.
Yes, it does.
Thank you.
It is.
And just a reminder, we're going to vote on this as if we were removing the line appeal by Daniel Sloan of the Planning Commission.
Right.
And with just approval of.
With a bunch of conditions.
We've already amended it.
Yeah.
With all those conditions that we amended.
Mhm.
Right. Okay, please call the roll.
Schob.
Yes.
Washington.
Yes.
Raybold.
Yes.
Bowers. Yes.
Christensen.
Yes.
Ward.
Yes.
McGinnis.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
Okay, now we can vote on the other public resolutions and then we'll take a break.
Item 5C is approving the City of Lincoln redevelopment agreement for the 2236 R Street redevelopment project between the city and 2236 R Street LLC relating to redevelopment of property generally located at 23rd and R Streets, introduced by Christensen.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded by Councilman Schob. Any questions? Okay.
Housing, good thing.
Housing, it's a great thing. Love
Housing
it.
With some Section 8 units in there,
Yep.
too.
Good thing.
Yes.
Please call the roll.
Washington.
Yes.
Ward.
Yes.
Raybold.
Yes.
Bowers.
Yes.
Schob.
Yes.
Christensen.
Yes.
McGinnis.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
I had a speech for the other one, I forgot.
Item 5D is amending the fiscal year 2019-2020 CIP to authorize an appropriate $180,000 in TIF funds for the 2236 R Street redevelopment project generally located at 23rd and R Streets, introduced by Christensen.
Second.
Moved.
Moved and seconded by
I
Councilman
wanted to be,
Schob.
I wanted to be on this
You were going to
housing-
make sure you got on that
Yes, I
one.
really
Got
wanted
in
to be
there.
there, yes.
Any other questions, comments?
This is a good thing.
Yes,
Okay.
I wanted to be in the room when it happened, yeah.
Yeah, oh boy. Okay, please call the roll.
Schob.
Yes.
Raybold.
Yes.
Yes.
Washington.
Yes.
Ward.
Yes.
Bowers.
Yes.
McGinnis.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
Okay, 6A.
Oh, we already
We voted on 6A.
We did move
already.
that to
Delay.
17? Okay.
Yep.
I'd like to call a 5-minute recess.
Chicago model.
Be back here in 5 minutes.
I had a big speech for that.
That whole thing?
Yeah, yeah. Ready,
Hello.
okay.
I'd like to call the meeting of the Monday council meeting for August
Our
10th.
regularly scheduled Monday marathon meeting?
Marathon meetings.
Okay, let's do it.
Okay, we're moving on. Sony, number 7.
7A, Comprehensive Plan Conformance 20011, declaring 2.38 acres of city-owned property generally located at 635 J Street as surplus.
Thank you, Chief.
Good afternoon, members of the council. Jeff Blymeister with the Lincoln Police Department. And I'm here to answer any questions that you may have, but this is a request to declare the property, the police garage located at 635 J Street, as surplus. As you may be aware that we have reached out to the varying city departments, and we know that LTU does have a sanitary sewer line and a storm sewer pipe, which they've requested easements on. LES has requested a portion of the site be left open in order to gain access to their facilities, which is basically south and east of the property itself. And then we also acknowledge that we have received a letter from the current ownership at 701 J Street that they have an agreement that was based in 1972 relating to parking at the vacated 7th Street. And with that, I can answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions for the chief? Yes, councilpersons.
Good evening.
Good evening.
All right, so this has to do with the last item, and I don't know that you're the right person, but a 1972 agreement to park in the vacated, I'm not sure that it was actually vacated, but the 7th Street corridor.
Yep.
And I know at some point in the future, the plan calls for, our comprehensive plan calls for the 7th Street corridor to be open and a through street again. Do you know if the city has any thoughts about where we might allow for parking or transfer that agreement? Is there another place where we could transfer parking close by?
I do not know the answer to that. Well, I guess I should back up. I do know that there is other city-owned property that is within a couple blocks of proximity to this location. Why I know that is because that is one of the contingency planning phases that we have had, because right now we still park approximately 100 vehicles associated with the Lincoln Police Department on this particular property. Okay. And so there is city-owned property within 2 blocks that we are going to, at some point, develop, add additional security to in order to have a parking. Now, I can't speak to whether or not the current ownership at 701J would agree to this, but it could definitely be part of the discussions.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions for the chief? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
I'll be calling items 7B and 7C together. 7B is Annexation 20011, application of Calverby LLC and Carol Kruger Company LLC to annex approximately 24.65 acres on property generally located at South 84th Street and Yankee Woods Drive. And the related change of zone 05068G, application of Calverby LLC and Carol Kruger Company LLC for a change from AG Agriculture District to R3 Residential District PUD to expand the existing PUD by 24.65 acres for an additional 80 single-family and attached single-family dwelling units with waivers to the zoning and subdivision ordinances on property generally located at 84th Street and Yankee Woods Drive.
Good evening, council members. Christina Melgoza with Kruger Development, representing both Cal Ruby and the Carol Kruger Company. This is something we've kind of continuously come before you on, expanding our development at approximately 84th and Yankee Hill, the woodlands at Yankee Hill. So here shows, I guess we don't have the main section, but about on this side is where we have 84th, Yankee Hill running up to the north. And those are approximately the 24 acres that we will be annexing and changing the zone for, which on this one shows highlighted in yellow are preliminary plans of single-family housing continuation there in the development. It also mentions the one waiver for parking requirements, which applies to the blue areas, which are two different areas of our commercial development in the Enterprise Center, allowing for a 1 to 600 parking ratio. And I can answer any questions you have.
Any questions? No?
Okay.
Anybody else would like to come forward on this item? Seeing none. We should move on to the next one.
Item 7D, amending section 2.04.010 of the Lincoln Municipal Code related to rules of the council to add Rule 3-33, signs prohibited, to prohibit signs in council chambers during meetings.
Thank you. Councilman Christensen.
Okay, well, kind of an introduction to this. We've all experienced what we've seen over the last few weeks. And I'd like to start by just saying council rules are there to help streamline our process to the extent possible, to make sure each voice can be heard. And there have been some suggestions that this ordinance or rule change to the city council is somehow infringing upon liberties, the liberties that are outlined in the First Amendment, for example. I'd like to speak on liberty for just a moment. One way to look at liberty is it is a tension or a balance in between tyranny and chaos. That sweet spot right in the middle is liberty. And it seems to me, the reason that I brought this forward is it seems to me that lately our meetings have been drifting a little bit closer to chaos. And it's time to restore some balance to our meetings and the proceedings. Again, I want everyone to be allowed to be heard without distraction to the council members or disrespect to the person who is speaking to us. All rights that we have are subject to restrictions based on time, place, and manner of exercising those rights. And the reason for this restriction is to help move the council business forward smoothly while respecting everyone's right to be heard. And so that's why, after talking with a couple of other council members, I brought forward this rule change to the city council.
Yes, Councilperson Rabel.
Well, as you all know, Roy and I don't often agree on a lot of things, and this...
Wait, what?
This is, I know I'm revealing a huge secret. However, this is something that I wholeheartedly supported. You know, we're a chamber. We welcome public discourse. We welcome dialogue. We want to hear both sides of the issue. I think we're a very thoughtful, deliberative body, and I think the beauty of Lincoln is how we communicate. I have found that the signs that people hold up and held up while other people are speaking, and the jostling of the signs and the lifting and the raising and the lowering and repositioning the signs so that they can be in a camera shot, incredibly disrespectful to those people that are speaking at the podium. They are a distraction to the council members, and I think they show a tremendous amount of disrespect in this chamber to make sure that every voice is heard. Whether you agree with it or not, that's irrelevant. We want to have people have an opportunity to say their piece and be listened to without a distraction from anyone in the audience. Can we require people to be respectful in this chamber? Yes, we can. We absolutely can, without infringing on their right of freedom of speech. You know, it's specifically referred to signs. We're not saying that they can't wear a t-shirt on their body that says whatever message they want us to see and hear. That's certainly a-okay. We're saying we don't want the signs to be the issue. We want to hear you. We don't want you flaunting signs all around the chamber because it's disrespectful, not only to the colleagues up here who spend hours sitting up here, willing to listen to every person out in the audience who wants to come and provide public comment. And I support this, and I certainly support everybody's opportunity to their First Amendment right of free speech. But free speech doesn't mean you impinge and act disrespectful to other people and their ability to have free speech.
Thank you. Is there anybody else? Yes. Councilperson Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also support the ordinance. You know, I've been a career public servant, and this is the first time I've worked in a public building where signs have been allowed. And so it's been more of an issue for protocol for me and decorum, because in the state capitol where I've worked, in the United States Capitol where I've worked, it was always been a non-issue. And so the only thing that gives me pause is the timing. It feels a bit punitive to our citizens who have brought signs in. However, I don't disagree that we need to do it. I just feel like the timing, if we could work out a different start date, perhaps, should it be passed? I don't know. it's not that I disagree, because I do think it's important. It is very distracting, and I think that it does not impede with freedom of speech. But the timing does feel uncomfortable to me.
Okay, thank you. Councilperson Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
It has been distracting to have signs waved around in the cameras in order to overtake somebody else's sign. I've not enjoyed that. But before I could be completely supportive of this ordinance, I would like to have a couple of things clarified, and I don't think I mean clarified right now. I think I need to have some understanding of what sign means, how it's being defined, because I don't want people to have a restriction on their freedom of speech in their T-shirt, in a button that they might wear. If the person were hearing impaired and they came before us and wanted to use ASL to sign their, just a moment, they wanted to use ASL to sign their testimony, or even if they felt that it was important, if they were going to sign their testimony, to have a small placard in front of them while they were speaking. I want to make certain that we haven't infringed upon somebody's right to dress the way they want to dress, wear a button, or use a placard. Also, I'm confused by a comma or lack of comma at the front end that says that signs are prohibited, period, except for those people who have been recognized by the speaker. At which point in that chicken, egg, chicken scenario does a person get to say, I've already been recognized by the speaker? They can sign in, sit down, but they haven't been recognized by the speaker, and so they're asked to get rid of their sign unless you've somehow gotten to the chairman beforehand, and then you're allowed to carry your small sign. So I just need a couple of things clarified, reworded, so that we have something that is legally defensible and does not distract or create some odd situation for people.
Okay. Councilperson Show.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My comments were almost parallel to Councilwoman Washington. Mostly the second sentence in this is the rule shall not apply to speakers. And I'm thinking, much like her, okay, so if I'm doing a presentation, then I'm allowed to have a sign. Maybe just a little bit of clarification. I think what we all agree on is the people that were moving their signs around and trying to draw attention to themselves was problematic. I hope we can have a little bit more conversation about this.
Okay. Councilperson Rabel.
Well, the reason why the timing of it seems odd, I remember we've been on, I've been on the city council
6 years.
for 6 years, and also as a county commissioner. Before that time, I don't recall us having to deal with a sign issue since I've been on the city council of people bringing in signs and being disrespectful. I do recall a time as a retailer with another group of retailers, and we brought in signs, and we were told by the chair of the council, no signs allowed. So when this happened recently, I went to law and said, I believe that there's something in the rules that we are not permitted, people that come into the chamber are not permitted to bring in signs. Can you follow up and verify and check for me? And they said, I've heard of that protocol. but let me go check. And they checked, and there was nothing written that prohibited people from bringing signs in. I think it's at the discretion of the chair. And so I was really surprised. I brought it up to Richard, I brought it up to Roy, and I said, I think this is how we should go, to keep decorum in the chamber so that we're respectful to the speakers.
Okay, Councilman Christensen.
Okay, so to answer a couple of questions, I think the definition is pretty clear that it excludes things like shirts and buttons and such. But if it's not, we can go through with law and make sure it becomes clear between now and next week. I think the definition looked pretty detailed to me. But as far as timing goes, on when it becomes enforceable, timing goes, for example, next week would be a vote, and then it would be within a week or so, the mayor would sign it, and then within 2 weeks of that signature, it would become the rule.
I think we're familiar with the
So-
back-end timing. I
Right,
think-
so it's not going to affect this discussion we've been having about the budget and defunding police, those kind of things. But it is certainly is a reaction to what's been going on in the chamber. So as
The
far as
disrespect.
Okay. Councilperson Bowers.
I just have a question. I just have a question for our city attorney.
Yes,
Thanks so
Johansi
much.
Christie, city attorney.
Was wondering if we can get your kind of perspective on, is there any kind of First Amendment issues with this? Are there any legal concerns that we should be aware of?
Well, certainly it's the law department's position that this is legally defensible. We obviously, put our heads together, wrote it in this way, with the expectation that it would be legally defensible.
I'm gonna look you right in the eye,
Yeah.
so that way I don't have to look through it.
And if you want me to just, I mean, I could say a couple other things about that, but I mean, the answer is, yeah, we believe that it's legally defensible, certainly.
Thank you.
Yes, Councilperson Washington.
When is a sign an exhibit?
When is it an exhibit?
And are exhibits prohibited?
So if you're saying exhibit, I think that a sign could be an exhibit if someone is addressing the council as part of their presentation. That may be what you're getting at. So this rule shall not apply to speakers recognized by the chair to address the council. So if someone is up here right now and they would like to utilize an exhibit, I think that the way it is written right now would be the intention that you could use exhibit, like right now when I'm addressing the council, but not if I'm not addressing the council. If I'm not addressing the council, I would be unable to use it.
So when would you be able to be recognized by the speaker so that you could enter the city council chambers with a sign?
And I think that logistically, I think that that is a very fair question. I think, to be completely honest, I think that there are probably at least a couple different ways to handle that. It could be someone could request permission, on the outside, and maybe when they come in, they could do it, have some procedure that way to request when you get here, or when you enter, when you address the council, ask permission to retrieve the exhibit or something like that. I think that there are probably at least a couple different ways to handle that. I can't say that, we didn't, draft logistically how that would work. We were just thinking more constitutionally.
Okay. Any other questions?
Tammy and I have a question.
Yes.
She gets to go first.
You bid up.
Thank you, Councilwoman Ward. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Christie, thank you for coming forward. My question is a little bit more related to your last statement. Free speech and Congress shall make no laws. Free speech and the city council shall make no laws. Do you feel comfortable defending this? That we're making a rule saying you can't use this method of free speech?
So I think the free speech argument legal case law is somewhat nuanced and complex, and we could talk about it for a long time. But reasonably, or just generally speaking, what I would say is that you can reasonably regulate the place, time, and manner. There can be place, time, and manner restrictions, and you can also, as long as you're not prohibiting or specific to content-based or viewpoint-based. Now, those are generalities that apply to how the state could address free speech. And so, you have to be within those bounds, those rules, basically. And so the place in which it's being regulated here, we believe is appropriate, and both the time and the manner we believe is appropriate. Also, again, it's not content-based or viewpoint-based, so it's not attacking a specific opinion, if you will. So again, generally speaking, that's how the analysis would go for that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilperson Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is for our city attorney as well as introducer, Mr. Christensen. Was there thought given, or what are your thoughts, Mr. Christie, about addressing while we're at it the noise level inside the chambers, outbursts or shouting? And I know our chair has been great, as has our past chair, about trying to keep that at a minimum for distraction and courtesy to other testifiers. Did you consider that? Does that give you angst as a city attorney legally, or is that on the table, or?
Councilperson Ward, to be completely frank, I don't know that I thought about the noise.
And no one's asked you probably till now, so.
Correct.
That's fair.
And so I don't want to.
Nope, that's fair. I was just curious as to what, as well as our colleagues, so no problem.
Well, I would say.
Thank you.
That's probably generally just a responsibility of the chair to maintain order in that fashion and saying, hey, we need to calm it down, and which I think every person all three of us who are sitting here, four of us sitting here who have been chair or our chair, have had to do on occasion, so.
Well, and then the hallway noise as well. I mean, we can't ignore that. I mean, we have, so just something to think about, I guess.
Yeah.
So, thank you, Mr. Christie, very much.
Any other questions? Okay. Anybody else would like to come forward and speak on this issue?
Hello, my name is Robert Way. I live at 801 Elevado Avenue here in Lincoln, Nebraska. Robert's ROBERTWAY. The matter before us is about order in the city council. And order in the city council is maintained by the chair. The chair is elected by his fellow council members. There is an established precedent for this matter. The thing that seems to be most on the mind of something I'm hearing is that signs might be present to express your viewpoint on TV because right now I'm on camera and it goes out. That to me is not the primary concern, and I don't see why by adding a convenience and a way for citizens to become more involved in the process, when we added cameras, we would then use that as a reason to have less comments. On the subject of signs, the subject of civility, the subject of chaos, it is definitely something that every person needs to maintain. You can't do whatever you want or survive long. I mean, I would like to eat ice cream all the time, but I would soon die. I'd get very fat and then I'd die. But there are, when you're talking about a group of free citizens, and you have to look at organization and chaos, I think you should always favor chaos. We're talking about signs. There's a sign. It was founded and displayed proudly against the people in charge, and that whole situation was quite chaotic. That is a symbol, not of order, not of things always going smoothly. It's the sign that men, and probably some women, marched under to create the first and longest standing free republic in the world. We could have a much simpler system. We don't have that system. We have a collection of free citizens who are going to disagree wildly, who are going to have massively opinions that are just, even to me, who tries to think of himself such as a free thinker, occasionally will seem odd. But occasionally, we need to have those things, because 2 years before we became a nation, they formed the first abolition group. At the time, that was a crazy idea. They thought they were going to destroy society by abolition. But eventually, through a lot of discussion and a lot of science and a lot of protesting, that became the accepted thought. So if the process is to keep people from getting free airtime, then the cameras only hit certain spots in the chamber. You can move displays out of those spots, and then those people still have the chance to communicate with you, who are representatives, but not get free airtime. And those pretty much all I got. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Any questions? Seeing none. Thank you.
Thank you.
Who else would like to come forward?
Jane Kinsey with Watchdogs. This ordinance doesn't go far enough. This meetings in the last months have been like a circus. This is a public body that is established by law, and the meetings should be conducted lawfully. You can't go into the court of any jurisdiction in the United States waving a sign, carrying a placard, saying how you feel one way or the other. And this place should be respected. It has the flags back there, which also are found in courts. When you vote, you cannot have political signage or electioneering within a certain length of where the vote occurs. So you have every right to limit what goes on in here. I don't think you should even be able to wear T-shirts with writing on it, or have any other kind of face mask that says you're a political statement of any kind. This should be a totally neutral place in which people express their opinions, or laws are passed, or debate occurs within time limits. So we would say this ordinance should be expanded even farther than where it is. It's fine for people to have their say, but there needs to be a procedure. There needs to be decorum. There needs to be respect. And it has totally been lost in the last few months in here. It's an opportunity to teach people to be respectful, to have decorum, and to have follow procedure within lawful jurisdiction. And you have every right. You're not cutting out somebody's free speech by having decorum. As I said, in courts, there are issues of decorum. People, even accused felons or accused people who are innocent, are advised to dress appropriately and conservatively so that others may see that they take this total with decorum, this procedure with decorum and with respect for the law and for what is going on and prescribed by the law in that area. So we would say that this should go even farther, and that you should consult with the legal authorities as to how far it could go, because you want to have respect for your body, and we want to have respect for the law in Lincoln, Nebraska.
Thank you. Next. Both can come up.
Hey, everybody. Yeah, so this is such an interesting thing because, we've been pushing for a lot of things to happen, and it seems like things die via incrementalism in politics, and yet it's really awesome how quick you guys can work towards things like this. I have a lot of problems. I could speak on the legality of it. We do think it is a violation of the First Amendment rights. I understand that you have spoken with a lawyer, and so I won't focus on that. One of the issues that I have with this is, as we stated, the chair is responsible for maintaining order within this room. And so in that same regard, if your job is to maintain noise rather than sound, if someone is creating an interruption, that's a situation in which order has been taken away, and you want to bring back order. In that same regard, I don't think that a sign is inherently noise. I think perhaps the actions of people jostling to have their sign seen is a distraction, but I don't know that a sign itself is a distraction. I mean, if I'm sitting in the back and I sneeze, I don't think you're going to ask me to leave the room for being a disruption. And yet if I start speaking up and distracting from what's going on, that makes sense. And so I do think that it's an overreach in that regard. Additionally, and speaking to Councilman Christensen, the other evening I did ask you to get off of your cell phone, to which you responded that you were taking notes. I want to acknowledge that a cell phone when driving is a larger distraction than a billboard or perhaps a sign on a building. And so it seems interesting to me that we're doing all this work to get rid of that distraction when we're not interested in getting rid of other distractions. So I would say perhaps first you should look at banning computers, banning cell phones, things that we know are distractions, so that you can focus on the issues at present rather than raising these issues that I don't think were a problem beforehand. Additionally, to move to add shirts to that, I think is insanely an overreach, because as you've said before, this is about distractions that are occurring. I don't think someone sitting in this room with a shirt that potentially has a political message on it should be considered taking order away from the things that are going on here. On top of that, I think that when we talk about, the act of someone bringing in a sign and how like them standing in the background is potentially bringing their message up during time, which isn't there. As was said before, we could change the camera angles to prevent that from happening in the future. So I guess basically what I'm saying is, like, overarchingly, I don't think that this is a purposeful resolution. I don't think this actually seeks to fix a problem. What I do think this seeks to do is to make a statement to the individuals that have been voicing their concerns this summer, that not only can things be done to actually affect change, but additionally that actions are being taken to actively silence them. Again, you said multiple times this is about respect for the individuals that are up here speaking. And so as an individual who has waited multiple hours to come up in here and speak night after night after night, I will tell you, I have not been offended by that from either side. Additionally, there have been people up here with signs that don't voice things that I agree with. And I have not been offended by that. That has not made me feel like my time isn't being valued. What has made me feel like my time isn't being valued is the fact that I literally left my house tonight because I saw this was going down and I was like, what the heck? Like, y'all are quick movers. I mean, y'all are really getting stuff done now. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, it's like, you know, things can happen immediately. We were told that it takes a really long time for ordinances to happen, but this is what, like a month in and this is going down. I really do think this is a waste of time, though. I'm going to be honest with you. Like, I'm so exhausted. I really did not want to come here tonight. It's an absolutely lovely day outside. Not only is time being wasted in this room as we discuss this for a longer amount of time than those incidences actually distracted from the matters at hand, but additionally, we're going to sink resources, including taxpayers' money, into fighting this in court, because I guarantee you the ACLU of Nebraska will be battling against this, in addition to other lawyers that do understand that this is a violation of First Amendment rights. And so I do not support this. I don't know if that's going to make a big impact on you, because it sounds like a lot of you are very serious about it. And so if you do pass it, I also ask that you add to it that, you know, cell phones and computers are also banned. I don't think you should be taking notes on a cell phone when paper and pencil is good enough. So thank you. Black Lives Matter.
Yes.
Hi there. My name is Serena Freets. I'm going to kind of echo some of the points that Kieran had referenced to in why are you wasting everyone's time about signs? We've got a lot of other really important things to be talking about. And I think it's important for us to name that many of you have taken issue with how the recent engagement of local politics is currently happening, what this movement looks like, what we're asking for, what we're demanding. And when you raise the issue of concern of the decorum in the chambers, and the tensions are high, because what we're seeing is this bureaucratic system isn't working. And we're beginning to name that, and I can understand why that's really uncomfortable for many of you that are in this position. But really, this is ineffective, speaks to the bureaucracy. I oppose this, and to part with an affirmation, Black Lives Matter.
Thank you.
Hi there. My name is Ozzy, and I just wanted to obviously agree with Kieran's statements. I do think that this is a waste of time, but I also would like to come up here as an individual who was interrupted politely by Ward when there was a sign distraction going on between Fanchon and one of our friends and supporters. You know, I don't think that personally offended me. And I think what is more offensive is the stifling of opinion by having this on the board as an ordinance. What I had jotted down was I thought maybe like a general protocol was after citizens make a statement or something like that, typically they're expected to exit. And Fanchon, in that one incident, had spoken very, very earlier on before the whole incident had occurred. So if removing signs is so high on the priority, I believe maybe following other protocols that would cut back on that hindrance that maybe you're feeling, or that distraction that you might be getting from a full council. I can't imagine why somebody would also be distracted by a political message, be it one that they agree with or not, on a mask, on a button, on a shirt. Something that also gives me peace of mind is, you know, these are not comfortable things that we, the community, are doing. You know, we're still young and we're still learning a lot of things, and we feel anxious coming up here, and something that gives me personally a really sense of solace and kind of more will is looking back or exiting into the hall and seeing my friends in my community with signs and not letting themselves be silenced or truly embodying what they feel like is something that they're passionate about. So I just wanted to end with saying, if signs are removed, we'll just be back with our voices and without signs, but we will be embodying all of the messages that we've written on cardboard, on plyboard, plasterboard, whatever. So regardless, we're still going to be heard. Black Lives Matter.
Thank you. Anyone else like to come forward?
Hi, my name is Jess Parker, and I just kind of wanted to echo what everybody else, especially Kieran and Ozzy and Serena had said. I just feel like if you're going to ban signs, then you should ban everything else, like electronic devices and computers in here as well. I feel like the people who are causing the distractions with the sign, they could easily just be asked to leave. Like, it happened, however many weeks ago, and that was resolved right then and there. It took 2 seconds. Another comment that I forgot which one of you had mentioned it, but about the disturbance in the hall, like, we have nowhere to go. With social distancing, there's only a handful of us that can actually be in here. So unless you're going to provide an overflow room for everybody to go to be able to view the city council meeting, even with the TV out there, we're still going to be here. We're still going to be in the hall. I feel like everyone in the hall is definitely respectful of opposing people. I can't say that for the opposing people, but everyone that's always with us is definitely respectful. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else like to come forward at this time? Okay, seeing none, let's move on.
We can move on to Section 8, Ordinances, Third Reading, and Related Resolutions. Item 8A is amending the pay schedule for certain employee groups by adjusting the pay range for employees whose classifications are assigned to pay ranges prefixed by P to be effective August 20th, 2020, introduced by Bowers.
So moved.
Second.
And moved and seconded by Councilman Christensen. Any comments? Questions? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Ward?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Raybold?
Yes.
Bowers?
Yes.
Washington?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
McGinnis?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Item 8B is approving amendment number 1 to lease agreement between the city and Holmes Lake Professional Centers, LLC, which documents city's consent to sign lease agreement for area of Holmes Lake Park to John Watson, Watson Family, LLC, and ARW Properties, LLC, introduced by Bowers.
So moved.
Second.
And moved and seconded by Councilman Christensen. Any comments? Questions? Please call the roll.
Raybold?
Yes.
Bowers?
Yes.
Washington?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Ward?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
McGinnis?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
Should we do the motion now?
Yeah.
Sure.
See?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yes.
Councilman
D, D,
Moore.
and E.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to move items 8C, 8D, and 8E to date certain August 17th for action only.
Second.
And moved and seconded that we move 8C, D, and E to next week's meeting. Any comments? Okay, please call the roll.
Washington?
Yes.
Ward?
Yes.
Raybold?
Yes.
Bowers?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
McGinnis?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Okay. That ends our ordinances third reading. Resolutions first reading is items 9A through 9H. Ordinances first reading and related resolutions is items 10A and 10B. Section 11 is budget ordinances, related resolutions. We'll have final action on Monday, 8/24/20. And pending list items is items 12A through 12C.
Okay, let's move on.
Is there anyone here in the chambers that would like to come up for public comment?
It was. So many people here.
You can be speedy when you want to be.
Okay, you got five minutes.
Okay. Jane Kinsey with Watchdogs. I guess I'm wondering if you thought about when you have demonstrations downtown and loud noises, how are you going to have people move downtown and stay or even rent or whatever if there isn't some kind of limit on the noise control for demonstrations? I'm not real sure what the Lincoln law is about demonstrations anyway, but it seems like a lot of them have gotten out of control. We need to have post-protests. Watchdogs has protested. I have marched in protests, but they've been orderly. They have been had limits as to where they could go. They have had time limits. So I would encourage you to begin to think about something in that measure. If you continue to approve TIF projects in these hard times, eventually some of them are going to fail. And then you will be stuck with empty buildings or empty lots or empty whatever. So we would encourage you to be careful about the projects that you approve and the projects that you have some idea will have a success of coming to completion. In talking about aftercare programs for released offenders, one of the ways that people function that causes them to come in trouble with the law is the fact that they don't have some kind of internal structure of what the law is or of some moral value. And so when people are released from the prison, they continue to have this structure, because when they're in there, they don't learn new structure. They learn to serve their time of punishment. So they need a lot of structure when they come out. Recidivism is a high in the 70s for released offenders. So when you go to approve aftercare programs, you want to be sure that they have as much structure as possible. To expect them to have obtained that from being in prison is not realistic. And finally, what we would like to say is you have a hard job. You've had to listen to hours and hours of open mic. And perhaps there's a time when you could work things out among you first so that you could give more time to open mic. And allow people to express their free speech, but also not keep everybody here till 12 o'clock at night when their eyes are glassed over. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
get this guy real quick.
We haven't done that one.
Yeah. Thought about that just as I was leaving. Hi there again. Just wanted to come back and echo some thoughts that I had from earlier regarding the facility that would essentially be working with a couple of rehabilitated or in the process of rehabilitating some jail members. I don't want to say like convicted felons or anything, because I feel like that has a misnomer about it that gives people the wrong idea. But essentially just speaking on the fact that we have somebody in our community that is proven themselves to be legitimate and very caring in the field that they have pursued. And I kind of find it amazing how hard it is for someone who wants to do good to go through the legal processes and the kind of tiptoeing around everybody's concerns and stuff like that. And yeah, just wanted to say that I'm proud of the individuals who are striving for a more inclusive and understanding process of reincorporating citizens or individuals who have been incarcerated back into the community as they should be. Other than that, you know, man, I think you guys need to get a pop filter for this thing. But other than that, thank you, and
Thank you.
Black Lives Matter.
We just got to be careful that we're only speaking on matters not on this agenda or on future agendas. Thank you. Kind of both skirted around the edge there.
Hello, Serena is my name. So much red tape around what you can talk about, when you can talk about it. A lot of formalities. A lot of people are still learning. My comment is going to be brief. I'd like to say defund the Lincoln Police Department and Black Lives Matter.
Hi, my name is Jess, and I don't feel comfortable giving my address due to the ongoing severity of harassment that me and my children are receiving from people that usually attend these meetings with opposing viewpoints. I would like to use my time today to talk to you about the importance of voting to halt the budget. Many members of the community have spoke to you for weeks on end about their justified reasons for halting the budget and defunding the police department by reallocating the funds to other programs within the city who need it more.
We're not supposed to, the budget is on a
We can't-
future meeting.
Okay, we can't talk at all, even during public comment?
But we had our budget hearing
earlier, that's
last
right.
Monday.
Okay, so then I guess I will talk to you about the proposal to allow, or to ban the signs in the chamber. Kind of was up here earlier talking about that.
That was another item that's
That
on
was
our
already-
Oh my
agenda.
gosh, all right, well, Black Lives Matter and
Can I make
Yeah.
a suggestion?
Yeah.
If you want to, please type. Can you please type it up and email it to us
Yeah,
so that
send
way
it
we
to
can
us.
read
We'd
it?
like to read it again.
Please.
That'd be
Thank
great,
you.
thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to come forward in the chamber?
Benny, are you saying you want to come forward?
Online, still sunny?
I still want to.
Yes. We have one person for webinar.
Okay. You can get them online, that'd be
Yep.
great.
Abby?
Is she on there?
She's trying. Abby Coleman?
Okay.
We might be having some technical difficulties here.
Okay.
Jamie might be helping her. Abby, are you available? Abby, can you unmute your mic?
How long do we want to wait here? Another
Give her another 30
30
seconds.
seconds or so? Let's see if she can get on.
Yeah, we're both trying to get in touch with her to unmute.
Is she on now?
You can see the microphone's muted. There's a little red spot there, but.
Yeah.
Okay. It's your call, Sony. You think they're going to get on?
Could we ask, could we ask Ms. Coleman if she would put her comments in writing, the same as we just asked someone else for the record? I do appreciate that we've left this vehicle open, but sometimes there is an issue with people stepping away and not knowing when we're back, when we're ready for them. So she is there, so we can.
She still might be there.
Maybe
but
she's coming. I see another. We'll wait a moment.
They've sent messages to her, haven't they?
Okay. All right.
Okay. If she gets in, tell her to write it out for us. And
Abby, are you available?
okay. Well,
Mr. Chair, I would say remember the golden rule, and I move adjournment.
I'll second that.
please call the roll.
Yes.
Ward?
Yes.
Washington?
Yes.
Raybold? Yes. Christensen?
Yes.
Bowers?
Yes.
McGinnis?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
This meeting's adjourned.